how's it going? You are here for Heavy Art Talk. It's likely Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. For me, it's actually a Thursday afternoon, and I am pumped. I have Ellie Jo Livingston joining me today. Her work, which we're going to cover later, is truly amazing. It's a lot of really beautiful, fantastical watercolor work. And I'm sure there's some mixed media components too. But she's also an excellent tattoo artist, and she's done some work within the metal scene as well. A couple bands include Artificial Brain, Inner Arma, Revocation, and then a lot of her other work is more based in terms of the fantasy realm, so RPG kind of stuff. And there's probably going to be some pretty cool projects down the line, so please give her a follow. But let me go ahead and join Ellie to the stage with me. Hey, what's up?
Hey, how are you?
Doing good. Well, what have you been watching recently? I always like to just open it up with something easy.
I just saw oh my god. It wasn't it was The First Omen. I was thinking it was the other Catholic horror movie that just came out. About the Immaculate Conception. Yeah. I just saw
There's
the first
a couple
Omen.
of them that have like nurse theme. What am I saying? Nurse? I mean, nun themes. You know, like the last couple months. I'm getting confused.
I love that stuff. My family's not my Catholic family actually, but my family's not Catholic. But I fucking love satanic horror around Catholicism and all of that imagery. So it was actually really good, especially if you like horror in general.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm really up into that stuff. I want to watch that. Was it Devil Made Me Do It, or the movie that's kind of like a 70s sitcom? Have you heard about that?
I was trying to get my roommate to watch that with me last night, and he was like, no, let's watch this other weird thing instead. But that's definitely on my list.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that one. And then another movie I haven't seen yet, but everyone really likes that scene is Iron Claw, the movie about like the wrestlers. I think it also takes place in the 70s.
Dude, okay, this is like, we have like a crew of people that hang out at my house a lot. I live with my buddy Dan, who plays in Artificial Brain, and my husband. And then, a couple of the other of our other friends who live in Richmond, who are like other, heshers and freaks and stuff. They'll come over on Sunday, and I'll make dinner, and then we'll watch movies and stuff. And we went through a phase where we were all watching it was like Vice, Dark Side of the Ring, or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we watched the series on the Iron Claw family, and I was like, this is the most fucked up shit I've ever seen. So fucking sad. I had no idea that wrestling was so incredibly grim.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we saw the movie, and I cried like a baby. I was like, wow, I don't know. I'm crying at Zac Efron, but here we are.
Yeah, he got really buff for that role, man. Oh my
God. Also, one of my girlfriends who hangs out, who's like my bestie, she knits, and she was like, all right, I'm knitting all of the guys the same top that Zac Efron is wearing in the movie, which is like a weird little like crocheted belly shirt. So we're trying to get all the guys this summer on the crocheted belly shirt, Iron Claw tops. So if you know anyone who needs one, let us know.
Oh yeah. Oh man. I can tell this is going to be fun. What about music wise? Anything you've been listening to lately?
Yeah, we just saw actually my buddy Mike Baker, who also tattoos in Richmond, and also a true black metal warrior, got me turned on to Lamp of Murmur, which I know they're like kind of hype right now anyways, but I hadn't listened to it, and they came through, and so I went with him. And Tyler, who you had on, we were all at the gig together, and they were fucking sick. Yeah, they ripped.
Did Tyler move to Richmond, or is he just in Virginia, kind of close by?
No, he moved to Richmond, and now he works at the shop that I get tattooed at all the time, where my buddy works at. So that's how I met him.
Perfect. Yeah, mm-hmm. Oh, that's sick. Small world, man.
Yeah, super small.
So I know Lamp of Murmur, they played the Decibel Beer Fest, I believe, in Philly. So they must have done an extra show then in Richmond.
Yeah.
But yeah, you said it was a pretty good show then?
Yeah, it
Like
was
they
really
played
good.
well?
Yeah, it was really cool. I hadn't really listened to them before, but I do get Decibel, and I'll like go through and like try to, I don't know, just check out stuff that, whatever. If I haven't heard it, I try to check it out, but I don't always like it all. So I was stoked about this. I love Abbott and like Sons of Northern Darkness and that like era of Immortal too. So because they're
Yeah,
kind of channeling a little bit of that, it's like that got that like, I don't know,
for sure.
brutal
Yeah,
triumphant thing. I was vibing on that. That was cool.
yeah. No, Abbott, and I love that. Like, kind of. I mean, it's still early, but like, man, Immortal, I think, is one of the black metal bands that's aged the best, I think. And like, you can kind of also put it on. You don't have to be in a certain mood, like a really kind of like down and sad mood, because there is like enough weird positivity within the darkness with them. You know?
That's literally exactly what it is. Because
Yeah,
when I first got into black metal, is because I was sad and I was like, this is perfect. Like I was like 18 or 19 and I was like, this is sad metal and this is perfect for me.
yeah,
And then it's cool to uh I don't know, yeah, like not always have to be feeling like totally depressed and like you know your blackout curtains are down to like listen to something. So I know people like, a little shade because he's a little goofy, but yeah, I love that stuff. I think it rips.
yeah. I get you.
Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit
What about
about.
you?
Oh, in terms of listening,
Yeah.
oh well, funny enough, I've been loving the new Inner Arma album that just
Hell yeah.
dropped a couple weeks ago. I thought it was fantastic. I watched a really interesting interview with, man, I'm sorry, I forget his name, but the drummer of that
Okay.
band.
Oh
Do,
yeah.
do you remember his name off the top of your head?
TJ.
TJ, yeah.
TJ.
He was on the podcast with Nate Garrett of Spirit Adrift, which
Yeah.
plug, I watch that every Tuesday. But man, I loved what TJ had to say and like his experience, just because he used
Yeah.
to work in like Southern rock bands and stuff. And like, I mean, you know
Yeah,
how it is.
TJ's
Like,
like a child prodigy. He like
yeah,
played like since he was a little kid. Like, well, I didn't watch the interview. I'm assuming that's what he said
yeah,
about that, right?
exactly. He like
Yeah,
opened up
yeah,
for like ZZ Top and stuff. And he was like 14, in like a
yeah,
band or something.
yeah.
But
His dad like had him doing that stuff. Yeah,
yeah, just
yeah,
like, I don't know, that's cool. Like, I like metalheads who, I mean, I like metal of all types, right? But like people who like kind of came from the South and like have like and they don't turn their back on like Southern rock or just kind of like growing up, here, wherever it happens
yeah,
to be in the South. I think is interesting because for a long time, people didn't really think about it that way. Like that's what's interesting about Nate is he'll talk about like, Leonard Skinner and like Allman Brothers. And like, it's not like I love those bands, but when you live in the South, you can't escape it. So it's part of your upbringing. You know what I mean?
yeah. I don't I didn't listen to that stuff until I was older because my dad was a 77 punk and he was like super aggro about making sure I didn't listen to anything he thought was poser, which is why
Yeah.
I'm so neurotic as an adult. But then I met my husband like 11 years ago and he was like, you've never listened to like to ZZ Top or like Thin Lizzy or any of this
Mhm.
stuff? Like I was like, no, dude, honestly I haven't because my dad was like so anal about stuff that he in high school he was like, don't listen to Black Flag, those guys are jocks. And I was like, okay, I'll never listen to jock music, Dad. So like anything like that, you know what I mean? He was like, yeah, it was a weird
That's an
thought, a weird
interesting
stance.
upbringing.
Yeah, he gave me the Dookie tape cassette when I was 7, which I still have. It's like on my little I have like a little altar of things. And
Nice.
yeah, and literally it's just like a core memory. He handed it to me and he goes, Ellie, I think you're really gonna like this tape, but just so you know, it's not real punk. And I was like, okay, Dad. Like it, from like a really like first of all, Dookie's just like well, okay, maybe not everyone agrees with this, but like I think Dookie's a classic. Like I don't know, it's a classic to me. It's pop punk, but it's a classic pop punk record.
Oh yeah,
But
very catchy.
didn't want me to like mistake it for punk. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it took me till meeting my husband to like loosen up about listening to like some of that classic rock stuff. And now I love actually, but yeah,
That's
now I've been
really
listening to tons of
interesting.
things. Oh
I don't think many kids had that type of upbringing. You know, like they're like
no.
dad is like a punisher, like a punk punisher.
Oh my dad is a punk punisher. Yeah, absolutely. But what's weird is that he didn't the other thing was that he didn't fully accept as punk like grew into like heavier sound. You know, like UK like 84, 82, 84, all that stuff, like anarcho punk and or you know skinhead music and anything, although I guess skinhead is actually not heavy at all, but like I guess more like anarcho punk as things started to get kind of like heavier, you know, like he wouldn't accept that like Discharge to him is metal.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so or like yeah, like as things change into metal punk, and it was ironic because then I discovered crust and I was like, oh, this is my people. But he like wouldn't accept. He's like, that's just metal, and I'm like, okay, well, you can't live in 1977 forever, though.
Yeah, so you have like 10 bands you can listen to, basically.
Well, to him it was like 100, but they all put out like a single,
Okay,
you know, EP. You know what I mean? Like that's. I have all these 45s that I inherited from my parents, or they're not dead, but they gave them to me when I moved out the house, basically. All these 45s of like bands that my dad is a classic. Oh, that's classic. And I'm like, Dad, that's not classic. That's like wicked obscure San Francisco punk that like isn't even like that good. I mean, like some of it is, but it's not like classic.
Did he happen to like be involved in like the New York or like DC punk scenes like in the late 70s or?
No, he was in Boston and San Francisco. So his a lot of his big like his big punk time was in San Francisco. And he loves to talk about like his, you know, I played on Klaus Fluoride's drum set, and you know, I don't know, I dumped a pitcher of beer on so and so's head, you know, like this kind of classic sort of story. And then when he moved back to Boston, he started a band with like a 15-year-old singer, even though he was 30, and that ironically ended up being the band that like it's like maybe sort of a cult classic for certain niche Boston people and like got re-released at some point. But it's also like the guy who never was fully, oh God, what if he watches this? Hi, Dad.
Sorry.
Yeah. My dad rules. He's sick. He got me into punk, and that's what's important. But yeah, he doesn't like Thin Lizzy, so
fair enough. Yeah, what about you then, like in terms of kind of early examples of art that blew you away as a kid?
Well, you know, in contrast to me growing up with like parents who were really into punk and stuff, I was like a total indoor nerd as a kid. Probably much to my parents' chagrin. My dad was always trying to get me to play the guitar, and I didn't practice because all I wanted to do was draw. But I was like sitting at home looking at like second edition D&D books and all my Magic cards. So yeah, he like couldn't be less of that nerd guy. He's definitely, neither of my parents understood that. I think I was the only person in my family who liked that type of stuff. So yeah, all the second edition D&D stuff, all my Magic cards, all that shit.
When you're growing up, did you like make other friends who had similar interests then? Like you kind of were able to create a world, or was it pretty much just individual for you in terms of really diving deep into that stuff?
I did have a couple friends who were into it, like my best friend, who I was telling you about, who's making the knitted tops for all the fellas.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the stuff I liked was like sort of for boys, and so I didn't like. I was obsessed with Batman. I collected Batman comics from a really young age. I loved the Ninja Turtles. I loved X-Men. I was really into comics, really into video games, really into all that stuff. And horror, actually, from a really young age. I loved horror. And I met only a couple girls who liked that stuff, which I don't think I don't believe that stuff is gendered. I think that like women love that shit too. I've met tons of women as an adult who love all the same shit that I do. But as a kid, I didn't know a lot of other girls who liked it. So it was more like alone. And then eventually online when that became like a thing, like message boards and stuff. So
yeah. We're able to connect with people then.
Yeah.
And kind of going through maybe to like high school and post high school and stuff, like was there a point when you started to take art a little bit more seriously, or it just kind of seemed more like a career? Was there a point like that?
I was honestly like super obsessed with art like really early on. It's all I wanted to do, and I was copying even from when I was young. I was like, I'm gonna be the person. This is funny because it didn't happen, but I was like, I'm going to be the person who designs the characters in the video games, or I'm going to make comics. And so I would copy my comics. I was like really into Gundam. I would like copy the Gundam stuff when I was little. And then I stayed obsessed with it, honestly. So by the end of high school, by the middle of high school, I was trying to think of how I could because people kept telling me you can't, it's not a job you can have. And, you're just like, really like, that's not a thing, kind of, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. The typical naysayers.
Yeah. And my school only had 60 kids in my graduating class.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And, the art teacher was just the principal's husband, and you couldn't take art unless you were a junior or a senior. And I don't care if he were to ever unlike my dad, who I love, this guy was such a fucking asshole. He was such a dick to me about my art. And I felt like it was an uphill battle. I was serious about it and I was grinding on it, partly with that feeling of being like told you can't do something. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, so I was absolutely.
Yeah. My mom was like, Ellie, I went to art school. My mom went to art school for like being a performance artist, which is like even less of a job than illustrator.
Yeah.
So, then she was a secretary for my whole life, basically. And she was like, Ellie, I went to art school and I ended up a fucking secretary, and you can't do this. And so nothing gets me like ramped the fuck up like somebody telling me I can't do something. So that's maybe in terms of like taking it seriously, I was like, oh hell no. Like feeling like everybody told me I couldn't made me just like dig my heels in, if that makes sense.
That's awesome. So I guess what happened then after high school? Where'd it go?
I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. And I honestly went because I thought that it was competitive. It was a more competitive art school to get into. And I wanted to show people, like, you think that I'm just like, I don't know, like I'm going to, like, you don't think I'm serious, but I'm going to show you that I'm really serious. And so I thought by getting accepted and going to this really expensive art school, this really like sort of bougie art school, that I would be like proving that to people. And then I realized, even with like all of the merit scholarships I got, which was like a pretty good chunk, I like sat down one day with the fucking financial aid people, and I was like, how much money am I going to owe at the end of this? And they told me I was going to owe $56,000. And I was like, nah, I'm like serious about this, but I'm never going to make $56,000 back. In my mind, I was like, that's not going to happen. So I dropped out. And
it's a big burden,
Yeah. I didn't think that was likely to pan out for me. But what was cool is that living in Baltimore, I met a lot of other like cool freaks, cool music scene there. I got to party a lot. That's when I listened, when I learned about black metal. And so that was cool. And then I got to have that lived experience of, being in Baltimore with a bunch of weirdos, which was sick. But yeah, then I left saddled with a little bit of debt, but a lot less than I would have. And
Right.
and yeah, I moved back to Boston, where I'm from. I took a bunch of years, and I just I think at that point I was like, I'm a punk and I don't give a fuck, and all those, like, the art kids, and they can pay for their school. I was very resentful. And then eventually I was like, I actually do want to go to art school, and I really do want to learn more. And so I went to Mass Art, which was in-state tuition for me. So that was like just wicked cheap and way more affordable. And so I did that. It took me a while to get through that, but I did it, and it was sick. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
When did tattoo journey start then for you?
That wasn't until I moved to Richmond. So I'd finished art school, and I was like waitressing and doing freelance stuff and freelance illustration. And I was in a band for a little bit, and I had just broken up with my ex, and our band played with my husband's band. And then he was like, we started dating, and then he was like, I'm moving to Richmond. So I took it as an opportunity to like start over a little bit. And I had always wanted to get into tattooing, but it also felt, especially in Boston, where it had been illegal until like 2000.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it was that late.
Yeah. So it was a very closed scene, and it felt like a job that I wanted because it felt like art that punks could do. But I didn't feel like I could access an apprenticeship there at all. Like if you talked to people about it, and this is still somewhat true, but it's changed a lot. If you were like, oh, I want to be a tattooer, you have basically ruined your conversation with this guy. Like, he not only did he not want to talk to you anymore, but he would instantly sort of demote you, like in terms of like, oh, this person is trying to get an apprenticeship, and I don't want to fuck with that. Also, it was almost like a little aggro, like, oh, you think you can be a tattooer, huh? So, like, you can't handle the truth. So like very closed in Boston. So when I moved to Richmond, I was like, okay, I can afford to take some more risks here and try a little harder. I could like be a little more unemployed, like a little less employed in Richmond at that time.
Yeah.
It was cheaper.
Right.
So, yeah. So I was like, I'll just try. Now that I'm living down here, I was like, I'm going to try that again. And it took me a long time to get into that still. But one of my friends knew somebody basically who needed someone. And it was a whole fucking schlep, which I'm sure you know about somewhat. Or do you know about tattoo apprenticeships?
Well, they vary, but yeah, I know that it's a grind, and sometimes they don't really want you there. So it's a difficult relationship because you're kind of like persona non grata, yet you're helping clean. I'm sorry if I'm saying any terms wrong, but where you're sitting and stuff, and they're making sure that the shop's clean, that kind of stuff, prepping stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. And in the traditional tattoo apprenticeship, it's also like mostly like hazing and stuff. So and it's like sort of like part of biker culture. So, yeah, I finally got the thing I wanted, but it was like so fucking brutal for me. Um, I played a lot of Dark Souls after work to get through that, and just like feel my feels. But yeah, that was like a pretty horrible time for me. But
What
eventually,
years were those? Because I feel like, I mean, you know better than me, but a lot of those like horror stories of apprenticeships and stuff, I heard most of those around early 2010s and before. But like, it seems like, well,
yeah,
it seems like there's some places that are just trying to make money off you and exploit you, but
hmm
there also are, I think, people that are just not as much of dickheads, as well. But I don't know.
yeah.
You tell me.
Well, there's all different stuff, and I don't want to speak for all tattooers at all because like
Right.
it's a huge community and culture, and I do not speak for all tattooers.
Of course.
And a lot of people had worse apprenticeships than I did. But at least in Richmond at the time, I moved here in 2013, the very end 2013, and I got my, or I guess I got kind of in with my mentor in 2015, and then I was apprenticing 2016 and 2017, and but first I worked the front desk as like the desk girl, right, the shop girl, which is like a pretty common way to get in.
Right.
So he, hired me that way, being like, you can be the shop girl, and then like if I think that you're cool, then maybe I'll apprentice you. Um, and yeah, Richmond at the time was pretty well. I don't know. Maybe it's just my experience. Like, talk to other Richmonders. I don't know, but my experience was very much that it was very traditional about everything at that time,
Yeah.
and my friends, even in tattooing at the time, people who I cared about and I still do care about, who are like older guys mostly, because I didn't really know any women who were tattooers. Um, they, and I even maybe thought of as like a big brother in a way, kind of. Those guys were even like the feedback I got when I was like, "Is this normal or is this okay or does it have to be like this?" They would be like, "You got to run through the fire." Like a guy that I love and really respect and have been tattooed by millions of times, and he's a great friend of mine. He was very much like, "Well, you want me to like shed a tear for you? Like, you want me to? Are you sad? Does it feel bad to have to do the bad apprenticeship? Like, like buck up, Buttercup." So
Yeah.
it was a lot of that. And even like getting into it, I was like grilled by a friend of mine who basically wanted to know, why do you want to be a tattooer? And he got me super shit faced at one night and was like, "You have to tell me why you want a tattoo, because we can't just let anybody become a tattooer. Like, this is like for people who love this." And
A lifestyle. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, it very sort of closed off thing. It feels very different now, and it wasn't even that long ago. It's so weird how fast things change. But yeah,
There's some
so
merit to what you're talking about. Like there's the good and the bad. And I mean, if you look at my wall here, half the stuff is tattoo influenced. I got some Timothy Hoyer prints, Tim
hell yeah.
Leahy there, original. I
Yeah.
got some Bob Roberts flash from the 70s. Like, I love this
Yeah.
shit too.
Yeah.
And I think the aspect of the strong mental fortitude, or having that thick skin, I think is important. So I
Yeah.
do get that.
Yeah, it was I totally understand, and I, when like you're obsessed with something and you don't want random people to like sort of
To
well, it's
glob
shitty. I like,
onto it or dilute it down. Yeah.
yeah, dilute it. But the thing is, I go back and forth about it a lot because, and like my friends and I are always talking about this. Like, if you love something, you want to share it, right? And you want other people who love it as much as you do to like, you want to talk about it endlessly and like you want to share about it.
Mhm.
But then you meet people who are like, lame, or they're into something for like what you consider to be the wrong reasons. And then you feel protective and you're like, no, I don't want to share this with you after all, because you seem like shitty in some way that I can't quite put my finger on,
Yeah, you're not going to do good for the larger community.
Yeah, be cool. But then I don't know. Yeah, so I guess I oscillate back and forth on that about like the punks are always talking about like how much to gatekeep, which I think is hilarious. And it's like, like is gatekeeping good or bad? I literally don't know. I don't know. Sometimes it's really horrible and bad, and other times it's like, oh, well, we shouldn't have let that guy in because he's super shitty, like maybe we should have kept him a little harder. But I don't know. I think with tattooing, people, I guess I say all that just to say that people feel very strongly about tattooing. And I think that's part of that entry into it, I guess. Yeah. Did you ever want a tattoo? I mean, I know you're an artist, but.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My current mode is no, but it's never like a never. But I have stuff that is very highly tattoo influenced because I was like, oh, portfolio,
yeah, right.
Yeah, I have a huge interest in it. Yeah, I've just kind of, I guess with the channel and stuff, I've just kind of shifted my focus to just being, like illustrator, and focusing all my extra time on that. But I have a ton of respect, and I have a collection of like at least 40 tattoo books, Japanese, American, some like line work, because that stuff, I also, even as, not a tattooer, but the power of a single image and like a really well composed design, that just really speaks to me, and I love in tattooing that people can put their own twists on like common motifs. Like, how many eagles have you seen? A lot, but everyone's eagle is just a little bit different. And like those little small differences I find interesting,
Yeah. And that's like, it's tough because I feel, I feel like a poser in every single world that I'm part of.
Same here.
Even if I love this, do you?
Oh yeah, totally.
It's like extreme imposter syndrome. But like the thing is, so that's why I'm like, I don't want to speak for other tattooers. I can only speak for myself because I'm like not a traditional tattooer, obviously. And I got a lot of like, now that I'm further out from the apprenticeship, I can see things more clearly. And I have friends who are tattooers now who I love and have a lot of great mutual respect for. And I feel like I have some footing now. But like before, I got so much feedback about my art never being tattooed. It would never be tattooable. I felt so othered by every part of tattooing that I felt really alienated from it and like I didn't belong. I feel accepted by metalheads weirdly in a way that like I never even, I don't know. It's weird, man. It's weird, like the way that you find people or like community and even in things that you love. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just vibing now.
It adds an element of the good side of otherness. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, if you look at both of our art, right? They're different, but we both are not highly like gory artists, for example, right? Like we both like metal, but like I don't do gore, you don't do gore, except for like in our own natural way. So it's like you draw from fantasy and there's like and I mean it in a complimentary way. There's like an element of like whimsical that I like love. Yep. And then for me, it's like I'll draw stuff that's kind of metalish, but it's very much rooted in like 70s psychedelia because that's my big interest, outside of metal. So you got to add that element of otherness to have a unique voice. And you certainly do in your paintings as well as your tattoo work.
Thanks. Yeah, you too. I mean, I think that when I got into tattooing, I had no idea that people would be so pissed about that. Just like what you were saying about the eagles. the tradition of tattooing is more important to people in a lot of ways. And what's cool about that, like I can always see like good and bad in something, right? The good part about the tradition of tattooing is you have a culture, you have like it's a culture of outsiders, like we're saying, like a history of people who live outside of society, of carnies, bikers, criminals, transients, like all kinds of cool fucking weirdos, right? Like true freaks. And that's very special. And so wanting to protect that or even be part of the tradition, it almost stands in for like religion or other cultural identities that somebody might have, right? It's like, I'm a tattooer. But I found that wanting to introduce or like try to do my own thing really rubbed people the wrong way. Even though I really didn't mean to, like, I wasn't trying to be an asshole about it. And I like, yeah, it sounds funny now. It's like, I just wanted to like tattoo what I was drawing, but that fucking pissed people off. Like, yeah. I mean, I know I'm not like a trailblazer or like some kind of like pioneer of some shit, right? But it felt at the time, like I was doing something that was really annoying to people. Like, oh, you're a woman and you want to tattoo like fantasy shit. Like, that's not part of this tradition. And I was like, well, I thought tattooing was also punk, and a bunch of these people are not fucking punk at all. I was shocked how not punk they were. I was like, holy shit, y'all have no DIY sensibility at all. Or like, I don't know. It was so weird getting it. I could just go on and on, but I definitely felt like, oh, I'm accidentally rocking the boat and it's not my intention, like with the style, I don't know, or something. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Here, I got a question. I think I know the answer, but so you're into the tattoo world, you're like the fantasy chick, right? But like in the fantasy world, so like your peers in illustration, are you seen as the tattoo chick? Is it the opposite?
It really fucking sucks, Lee. Totally. It's like, okay, this is classic because it's like, this is just the story of my life. In high school, did you have like one group of kids you sat with for like lunch or whatever?
Oh my God, no. I had like, I was the friend in all the different groups. But I hung out with the metal and the stoner kids. That was my home, but I could get along with everybody.
Yeah, I was the exact same way, except that my school was too small to have like distinctly like metal or punk kids. So I hung out with the music kids. You know what I mean? Like the kids who worked at the record store and, like would show me bands or make me CDs or take me to gigs, So, but because of that, I feel like that in life, and it fucks me up when I think about like what we're talking about, like just being on your show or your channel. It's like the feeling of like not being fully saturated enough in a thing to like quite qualify for anything. Does that make sense? I can't quite.
Oh, totally.
So it's weird. It's a weird feeling. Yeah.
Well, at least on this show, I like you just being you, and the whole thing with like working with bands. I mean, you just need to know a little bit about metal, and your art needs to be unique and cool, and you need to be a friendly person, and that's the qualifiers for being on the show. Just if anyone's aware, not that it's an open invitation; it is invitation only by me. But I don't care if you've worked with like 50 bands. I just try to find people that seem like they'd be cool for a convo.
You know what's fucking weird about that too is that like I spent my entire life in the music community, right? Going to gigs, being obsessed with music, and even making and I'm curious about what your thoughts are about this, because I feel like your art also, like you said, you have your hands in a couple different pies kind of.
Yeah, I'm not super metal art, in terms of my own personal style. I know what you mean.
But like I spent a long time trying to dude, the interview you did with Fred was awesome. And hearing him talk about like going from punk to metal and stuff, I was sitting here watching the interview and I was like, hell yeah, I gotta DM this guy later and be like, dude, I relate to all this different stuff. But like I felt that even with art, like how is it that I listen to punk and I'm obsessed with punk, right? Being younger or whatever. And my art doesn't fit at all, right? Does not fit the fucking bill. And then at some point I saw like John Baisley, who is a sweetheart, been very supportive of my art. And I was like, okay, like maybe there are some people making music, making art for bands, not necessarily like punk, but somewhere where they're using like colors, and
Yeah.
like, and not just oil painting, not just dance. I fucking love Dan Seagraves, but like not just oil painting type stuff,
Right.
Maybe I could fit in somewhere with that. Like, or even Aaron Horkey. Obviously, I don't do anything like that, but being from Boston, like HopeCon and Converge and this stuff, seeing like any kind of artwork coming up from like the hardcore stuff that he did or whatever, being like, yo, that's like I have vivid memory, like seeing like the Hang Your Cross, like the HopeCon artwork. I still have the t-shirt, like that shit. I was like, that's an illustration. That's not a painting. Maybe there's a place for me sort of in that. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird. Your journey evolves, I guess.
Yeah. And
stuff.
at the very least, you just hope that the client you're working with understands the type of stuff that you're skilled at and they're cool. And you just keep trucking, because I'm soon I'm going to be open up and being more deliberate with like trying to get commissions. Because up until recently, I've just been like, I just want to work on my chops, just get really good and define my style. I feel like I'm getting to the point where I can start, trying to get more clients. But even then, I don't care if it's a metal band, if it's a cool like psych or rock band. I'm open to anything. Just cool clients,
That's awesome.
People that are easy to work with.
Yeah, hell yeah. That rules. I wish that I was like, I think I have a fucking like a chip on my shoulder or something from my dad being like, is it punk enough? And then like all of my loved ones who I love being like, is that true enough? You know what I mean? It's like, it's weird in my own world being surrounded by, all the people that I love. Many of them are, being like, I think I have a little bit of chip on my shoulder. Like I want to prove that I'm brutal or something, but it's like, I'm just like a dude. I don't know. But
I don't know. But you're talking about somebody says you can't do it and it makes you want to do it more. That fuels the fire. So wherever it takes you, man, anyone who's watching this, and I can speak for myself, they're going to be leaving this and dude, this is awesome. They're going to leave with a fire under their ass and they're going to want to pick up pencil or, pen or whatever and just start drawing, because that's what I want to do after I, eat some dinner, because damn, like it just energizes you, it does.
Dude, I have a psycho energy for it. That's the thing. And that's what that's why, again, when people, I love the music, right? And I get fucking excited about the music. And I told myself I wasn't going to have coffee day, because after I watched the video with Fred, I was like, yo, he was not weird at all. He wasn't like overly caffeinated, I didn't think. But I was like, I could be that, but like 10 times worse if I drink coffee. I could punish the shit out of Lee about like the Charlie, like the fucking cork board, string board of like all of the shit that I love.
Oh, yeah.
So
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I love It's Always Sunny. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, with music, see, like all of these artists who did this stuff. And if you look back to this band artwork and whatever, I can get obsessive about that. But yeah, over time, people have told me, and this is not like shade about like you being like, oh, it's whimsical. I'm like, fuck, it is whimsical. God damn it. It is fucking whimsical. And that's because my influences early on came from literal 19th century children's illustrators who I worship, because I was like so obsessed with getting to the root. And I'm still like this, like with art and music, that I was like, Arthur Rackham is the reason we have all of these. I was obsessed with Rackham in high school. All of these fantasy artists from the 70s, like Michael Kaluta, fucking even Bernie Wrightson, who obviously doesn't look like that shit. All of those guys, like fucking, I'm trying to think of some of the other dudes who they lived with. They had like the studio in New York.
Barry Windsor Smith was in that studio
Yes,
too,
and
right?
Jeffrey Catherine Jones. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, Michael Kaluta. Yeah, all those guys. Like they were like Rackham worshippers, right? And they liked all that turn of the century shit. And so I'm like, I'll be the most original, like true. Like the same way that my dad is like, oh, you think you're a punk, huh? Well, the Sex Pistols are fucking posers because they didn't even listen to, Delta blues, which led to this, which led to this, which led to this. And then the first guitar solo ever is in, this Vibrator song or whatever. Like, so then I'm like, okay, I'll be true. So I'll copy Rackham. And then you start going and you go through and through and through. And the next thing you know, people are like, you should do kids' books. And I'm like, fuck, no, that's not what I meant. I mean, I love kids' books, but I love kids, don't get me wrong. But like, how did I end up here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a weird thing.
I mean, I love this. Here, I want to ask you this. This is becoming one of my favorite questions, but the 4 like artists who you think have had the biggest impact on like defining your style. So, we both love art of all types, but that doesn't mean that all those artists that we love really influenced us. So for you, what would be the 4? So Rackham probably is 1, right?
Rackham is number 1 because that was my first artist. It was actually my mom's best friend's dad worked at an art school, and he actually worked at the art school I went to. He worked at Micah, and we had dinner one night, and he was like, Ellie, as you can tell, I like panic a little sometimes, like, or I get like freaked out by things. I'm just very neurotic. And so like he asked me, I was 15 or maybe I was like 14 or 13. He's like, who's your favorite artist? And like, I could have told him honestly that my favorite artist was like, at that time, was like whoever was illustrating the 1990s Batman show. You know what I mean? Or like, I could have told him that it was like whoever did the concept art for Gundam Wing or something like that. Or I could have told him any of the Rebecca Gay. I could have told him any of the magic artists that I was fucking obsessed with, or any of those guys, right? But I panicked, and I was like, this is an adult, and you can't tell him stupid kid stuff. So you got to tell him an adult artist. And I was like, I'm like schwitzing. I was like, Manet. Manet. And he was like, Ellie, your favorite artist is Manet? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, you like to draw, like illustration, and that's your favorite artist? I got to give you some books. So he loaded me up on all of these books about Arthur Rackham, Edmund Dulac, Elizabeth Shippen Green,
like Kay
John
Nielsen.
Do you like? Fucking love Kay Nielsen.
Yeah.
Yep. John Bauer, Winsor McKay, all of like these OG 19th century illustrators. And then I was like, oh snap. I like visualize me clearing all the Gundam off my desk and being like, I only want to draw this shit now. Like obsessed with that. I didn't even know at that age. I knew that I had seen and have been obsessed with the Fairies book by Brian Froud, but I didn't even know at that age who Brian Froud was. I just, and I didn't know that he was also, like, he's a direct descendant of like John Bauer and Arthur Rackham and these guys. So it was almost like Al, who gave me these books, he like opened up this fucking world for me that totally changed my life with Rackham. And Jeremy too. I mean, I'm sure, like, you guys have talked about that, but like Jeremy is a punk who loves Arthur Rackham. And I was like, Dad, like, thank God, like another person, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So definitely Rackham. Sorry, that was wicked long-winded.
No, that was fascinating. That's awesome.
Oh, I'm glad that's not not punishing too bad.
There's
So
a couple artists I
definitely,
need to dig deeper into. I can tell you that.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I can send you a list of all my faves. If you like Rackham, it's almost like, well, it's like music. It's like if you like, and dude, it happens to me with music too. It's like, oh, if you like just entry level, you like, I mean, this, yeah, over and over again. Like, you like Heartwork? Bro, I'm about to blow your mind. There's like so much, and all my loved ones have, like, repeatedly, or they've even been like, "Oh, you like Black Breath? You're a poser, but that's okay. I love you anyways." No, just kidding. Black Breath rules. But they're like, "But what about all this other cool shit like that influenced Black Breath or whatever?" Like, there's infinite like clones to get into to be equally obsessed with. So I have this infinite clones. That was not a dig at Black Breath. I fucked up Black Breath, by the way.
Oh no, I got
There
you.
are infinite clones of Rackham that are fucking sick. That are like Rackham worship. Infinite. So
I have a book that Eric Roper recommended to me. It's the Golden Age of fantasy illustration. It's like a 70s
yeah, that's
book,
cool.
and it was like $10, super cheap. I'm
Yep.
digging more into that stuff now, but it wasn't like on my radar, and like I'm not thinking about it as much as you, for example. You know what I mean? But it's always been in the peripheral.
Yeah, yeah, but like once you start, you're gonna. I mean, yeah, that's
It's
a good
fun to
book
dig
for
through,
it.
yeah, and find stuff.
Yeah, and if you have like a collector brain, it's
Oh yeah.
fucking dangerous. Because then I have this fucking psycho bookshelf over here that's like just full of every book that I can find about those people. So yeah, I got so, when I read that you were gonna, or when you mentioned like maybe like choosing 4 people or whatever, I went fucking ape shit, and I was like, I can't make a list of individual artists, so I have to make a list of entire eras that each have like 15 artists in them almost, and then one artist has to represent the team. So it's like Rackham has to represent all of those guys, and that's got to include Aubrey Beardsley and Harry Clark and these guys that like are super influential to a lot of modern metal guys like Karmazid and Mystic Barbarism and that
Yes.
kind of stuff. But then I was like, okay, the next thing after the golden age of illustrators is like the 70s fantasy artists who are like,
Yeah. That's my shit.
Is it?
Oh yeah. 70s sci-fi and fantasy, yeah.
Fuck yeah. Okay, so just to break up my punishing, who you gotta tell me who your favorite 70s guys are.
I like a lot of the French artists a lot that worked in comics. So Mobius, Philippe Drouet, Philippe Cazat. And then we were talking about psychedelic art. So this isn't fantasy, but I love Rick Griffin. I love Robert Williams. So those artists really are influential.
I don't think I know Robert Williams.
I'll show you some stuff. He's the guy who founded Juxtapoz magazine.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
He has like it's like he would paint these incredibly unique stories in like a comic book style, but his technical ability is like unreal.
Cool.
He's still alive today, still working. He kind of comes from a little bit of the hot rod kind of style of art too, which is cool. You know, like Rat Fink and stuff.
Yeah, hell yeah. I love that stuff.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's like psychedelia combined with that is what kind of speaks to me. And then of course Frazetta. I like Boris Vallejo a lot. I mean, you know, this is a show for opinions, right? I don't really love the highly rendered people as much as I love the monsters and the scenery that he creates.
Dude, 100% hard agree. Hopefully Boris will never watch this, so it won't fucking matter.
I mean, he's a master, you know.
Yeah, like all hail Boris. Like, definitely, literally worship Boris for sure. He just distinctly uses really strong photo reference for his models, and they're not expressive the way Frazetta is, who's building on totally from his fantasy world, right? And so in that sense, Boris can sometimes feel like B team Frazetta, like just a little bit. Like, he can feel a little like a Frazetta clone without like the all of the sort of flowing movement of people's bodies.
I love how, the way he does like those serpents and dragons, the stuff that he makes up, Boris, like I love how like clean and polished they look. Oh, and then for me, huge influence in throughout my entire life, Roger Dean. Roger Dean's like number one. Like he's the shape language that he has, it's everywhere in what I do.
Fuck yeah, that's awesome.
And see, that's the thing with Roger Dean. Yes, album covers. I've seen those since I was a kid. So it's the music, because that was always my thing. Is like I found artists through album covers more than I did reading fantasy stuff. So I saw Frazetta on like, Molly Hatchet covers before I knew more about it. You know what I mean?
Dude, that Molly Hatchet record, that was one of the first times. Is it just the one? It's the Viking?
Is it no, there's a second one that had, he has the Death Dealer on the second album. So there's the first one with the Viking, second one's Death Dealer, which, you've seen that fucking image everywhere, the iconic one. And then Boris did the third album cover, I think, for them.
Okay, so it's funny because like I think of it's a show for opinions. I think of Molly Hatchet as being like a total dollar bin band. You know what I mean? Like when you're going through like that, the one of the fucking Viking is like, that is like the dollar bin record. And it sucks because if you like that kind of art, then as a kid, there's no way that you can stop and say, this has got to be a banger. And then like, kind of like not really a banger, actually.
Right. It's basically Leonard Skinner. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Some of like the coolest, like most like sort of like bling axe, like sickest fucking hev met record, like artwork, is like protecting some of the worst music. Some of it, not all of it. I love heavy metal. I love traditional heavy metal, but there's a lot of bad traditional heavy metal.
I feel What about you then for the 70s folks that are the biggest influence?
I had to say that Frazetta was like my guy because he represents so much of the stuff that I love. But I don't look at Frazetta anymore as a. Frazetta feels like almost like it feels like an entry level. It feels like Big Four of fantasy art, and I'm like, it's classic. I would never say like fuck that. Every time I see it, I'm like, damn, that's good. But I don't necessarily go back to listen to it all the time now. Like I'm not necessarily looking at Frazetta stuff all the time now to influence my work, but it did. Like earlier on, it had a big influence. And he represents the whole movement kind of. So I feel like I had to kind of put him as my representing number two. Yeah, dude, I don't want to say Brian Froud because people are like, Brian Froud, it's so whimsical. But it's like, yo, I do love Brian Froud. I'm a total puppet nerd. I love the Muppets. I love Dark Crystal,
man.
It slaps. It just does. I have like a little Dark Crystal thing up here.
Oh man, Dark Crystal, that brings me back. Like I love that movie as a kid so much. And if you're ever in Atlanta, the Puppet Theater here has a shit ton of Dark Crystal stuff.
I went. I got pictures of me hard styling next to the Skeksis. That was like a religious pilgrimage for me because I was like,
it's a pretty nice museum.
Like, it's a good museum. Yeah. It's a good museum. I love puppets in general. There's like the overlap with like political punks and puppetry and like anarchist stuff too. So I can get like nerdy about all the various ways I like puppets. But say what you want about Brian Froud. I know it puts me in like the whimsical children's book category and it's not very brutal, but I worship him too. So definitely Brian Froud's got to be on there with my 70s guys.
Very cool.
Yeah. And oh my God, I'm such a nut. I made a whole list here because all the studio guys I love, right? So like you said, Michael Kaluta, Bernie Wrightson. I love Bernie Wrightson, even though like my stuff is clearly not very influenced by him. But I love like creepy, eerie, fucking. I love all those old magazines. I still read them, and I love horror, and I love any kind of horror anthology. I'll I read a lot of horror. I like watching horror anthology, like Tales from the Crypt type stuff. I grew up on that, so it doesn't really show in my work, but I do love it.
Just such a master, man. He makes everything look so effortless, kind of like Frazetta. That's why I like it so much. You know, like it's like he just looks. He makes it look so easy.
It's annoying because you're like, were you always like that? Like,
yeah,
were you always? That's the thing with Tyler. It's like, how the fuck do you just do that, bro? Like, how do you just like the light source? Even I like struggle with light sources. I struggle. I have to literally set up a fucking light and set up the scene, you know, because otherwise I'm like, if the light's coming from here, I actually don't know how
it's so difficult. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyler's I would say he's a prodigy, but I actually think that's incorrect because before I first of all, he's a friend, so if he's watching, just respect, dude. Huge fan. But I looked at his earliest stuff when he was in his 20s, and you can see progression every year. So that's not technically a prodigy. It's somebody who just has worked his ass off and been very intentional about his practice. So like the discipline and also the humility to just keep pushing forward. That is why he's as good as he is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's true with a lot of people. People will ask me about that with tattooing or with other things, I guess, sometimes. And I really don't believe that most people, I mean, when you see like Bernie's stuff or Frazetta stuff or whoever, like
Frazetta when he was 10 was better than most people. So he was a prodigy.
It's
the fucking snowman shit.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. All that shit. And the comics he was making. And now I'm like, ooh, like, okay. But like content wise, like, okay, I know. But
skill wise, the
artwork, you're like, yeah. Or even like, do you like Adrian Smith who used to do, yeah. So even Adrian Smith stuff, a bunch of classic shit that he did when he was like 19. And I'm like, that's fucked up. That's really fucked up. But most of us have to grind and accept that we're going to suck a lot of the time and that it's just the grind that makes you good. You just have to be obsessed. But yeah, so you look at these guys and sometimes you wonder like, what the fuck? But like I've made this list of all these guys. Obviously Barry Windsor Smith, Jeffrey Catherine Jones, Mike Plug, John Howe.
Love that.
Yep. Larry Elmore, Clyde Caldwell, all those guys, the like OG D&D guys, Ian Miller, Jeff Easley. Jeff Easley could almost be a stand-in for Frazetta for me because Jeff Easley may have had a more lasting, continued influence on me than Frazetta. So I couldn't decide. And then like P. Craig Russell, who did a lot of the Elric comics, and Mike Mignola, who's been doing that stuff even since like the early 80s. Love Mike Mignola.
Very signature style. What about like Rodney Matthews? Do you like his stuff a lot?
I don't know it.
So he's done a lot of album covers. Yeah, look him up. He's done album covers for the band Magnum. He's done some other heavy metal covers. But he kind of has like a little bit of a Roger Dean-esque style too.
Okay.
Or I really love his shapes as well.
Yeah.
Eric Roper, you can. I mean, Eric Roper, like, I mean, he's been on the show, and like I think I mentioned, but he was an influence on me too. Because I was in like high school and middle school and seeing the Hein Fire stuff and just being like, holy shit, it's totally up my alley.
Mm-hmm, sleep covers, absolutely. Yeah, his shit's awesome.
That was a dream to be able to talk with him. He's one of my heroes.
Cool. Hell yeah, so cool. Yeah, totally. No, this stuff is sick. I didn't know this guy's name, but I do recognize some of this work, and very heavy metal, and even some of it looks like it's a little influenced by Ian Miller. He's got like an Ent kind of guy. It's a little smoother than Ian Miller stuff, but you can tell he's contemporary. That's very cool.
I'll flex a little bit. That's a Ian Miller original right there.
Ooh, the black and white one?
Yeah, it's
above
called
your fingers.
Fat
Fuck yeah.
Controller. I don't know what it was used in, but it's like a British character of this like fat guy who controls stuff. It's called Fat
Cool.
Controller.
That's sick as hell. Dude, Ian
I'd-
Moore stuff is sick because it's like punk and it's
Yeah.
fantasy.
Yeah.
He does both somehow.
God, he's so awesome. Big influence. Nice guy too.
Yeah, I can see that influence in your stuff.
I got a question for you. So we're open with our opinions, and of course, we're just making an entertaining conversation. But
Great.
you look at two pieces of art, and you judge one of them as being mediocre, amateurish in your head. You're not like mean about it, and then you see the other one, and it's great. What is the most common reason, or some common reasons that you would? What separates good art from great in a lot of cases? If you were just look at them. Does that kind of make sense? It's kind of an ambiguous question, but for folks who are like trying to learn, sometimes it's good to learn what to avoid as much as what to look for, you know?
I actually think I know how what I see is there's two things that I see in people's work that makes it look more amateur to me, and this includes myself. I look back at my own work, or I look at my work now and I'll be like, that looks it's my own critique of myself, and so that's why I would apply it to others, right? Like, you know what they say, like you're holding up the mirror, like whatever it is you have to say about somebody else. So the thing that I see is, one, not being informed by life, by an understanding of drawing from life. And that can be like, you drew the flowers or the animal or the person's body, and I can tell when it's informed by life. Like we're talking about Frazetta and his lines. He's making a lot of that shit up, right? He's making these beautiful babes or these like super jacked Conans and this type of thing. But the movement, it's very fluid, and it's informed by a very strong understanding of anatomy. And you can tell. It's true with every part of the drawing, I think. Like the fabric is not falling right on that figure because I don't think that you've drawn any fabric from life at all. And it looks what I would call generalized, like you generalized that. You were lazy about it. And this is my own critique of myself. I look at it and I'm like, fuck, I was lazy about that. I'm being lazy about something, and I look at it and I'm like, I made that up. That's totally made up, the way that fabric is falling, or the way that the body is sort of like I don't know, like seated, or like the hand, or
right. You could have double checked with a reference and found the in between, perhaps. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And even better, if you're drawing from life all the time at home, or if you're drawing from life enough and you're curious enough, it will inform your art without you having to try. And the longer that I do that, the more I see my own stuff being informed better, right? Like we're on that journey together, like getting better through your sort of daily practice of drawing from the things around you. I think that when I was a kid, I hated adults telling me that shit. You gotta draw from life. You gotta draw from life. And I'm like, I don't want to draw from life. I want to draw from the world in my head. But in order to make the world in my head look right, I have had to draw from life a lot to inform it. So I think that's a big one.
Great
and
point.
then the other one, I feel like I learned from tattooing, which is lines. Like in tattooing, one of the things that I learned early on was don't ever sculpt your lines. You pull one line, and if you kind of fucked it up, it'll soften when it heals. Maybe you could try, if you're sure you can fix it, you can go back over one more time confidently, but don't try to sculpt your lines. Like going back in, with a pen, with an ink pen, you can press down and lighten up, and you're going to get beautiful line variation to show shadows, lost and found lines, right? With tattooing, you really don't want to do that necessarily, because it reduces the confidence of the line. The line doesn't read as confidently. That's what I was taught. And the older I get, the more I see that in illustration too. This might just be a preference, but to me, a confident line, I'm sure about this, that reads as more professional to me than somebody who's, trying to sculpt the line, and they might even be adding sort of unsure extra marks that don't feel clean, decisive, and confident, I guess. Yeah.
And are
So
you
those
thinking mostly in terms of like contour line, not like hatching for shading? You're talking like the figure, for example, like what is like supporting it, right?
I would say both. I would say, to me personally, and I don't do a lot of cross hatching stuff. I've done some, but so I'm not an expert on that. But I know what I like, and that's just my opinion. And I feel
Totally.
like the stuff that I really like is, it's even in the cross hatching itself, unless it's like our crumb, unless it's like supposed to be wild and expressive. I sometimes notice somebody who looks like they're trying for a really clean look. They're trying for some of these classic 70s guys, and they're missing the mark a little bit because it doesn't feel sure. It feels like, I'm not totally sure about like how these lines should go. And then I might add some over here, and it's like, now it's not like one sort of flow. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. No, I think that's a really good point. I forget what I was going to say exactly, but yeah, I totally agree. And like learning like line weights too, that's a big thing, and like using different tools.
Definitely.
Like, so do you use mostly, and we'll pull your pieces up here in a minute, but do you lean mostly on like dip pen, or do you use brush for your inking, like the line work?
I use a dip pen. I used to use microns and stuff when I was younger, and I switched to a dip pen actually after I took a class with Scott Fisher, who has also done a lot of work for D&D and Magic, and his class was great, and I got really into the dip pen from that. And then I took another class from George Pratt, who also he did a lot of work for like DC and Vertigo comics and stuff, and we got more into the dip pen with that class, and I started to feel more confident with it. I feel like it's like head and shoulders above the fucking micron now. I'm like, what am I doing with that? Like, now that I like it, I fucking love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a very short relationship with the dip pen, and I did not give it a full shot. I didn't. Well, there's like something you have to do at the beginning when you get a nib, right, to make sure that it takes the ink right. Like, it's like making it ready. It's like soap or something, or I don't remember.
That might be a thing, and I might be talking on my fucking ass with this completely, because I also had that experience of being like, well, I'm assuming you're going to say, you like get the dip pen, and you're like, how come it's not even working at all? Like, it's barely pulling a line. It's pulling a shitty line.
I just wasn't using it right. I know I wasn't.
I felt that way too, and then I took this class from George Pratt, who is friends with Michael Kaluta, and was like, I'll give you the Kaluta tip, which is to use a lighter and to heat up the nib for the first time before you use it. And
that's it. Readying it. Yeah. It's something like that. Yeah. It's been like a couple years.
Yeah. Maybe people have a different technique, but that was the first I had ever heard of it. And I was like, if Kaluta does it, I'll do it. You know what I mean?
Made a big difference, right?
Completely. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I need to give it another solid shot. Because I love being able to control and have like more interesting lines and stuff. What I've shifted to is mostly brush, except for like the shading. So, well, I use brush for shading too, but like if I want to do hatching, I'll use the microns. But I don't like microns for outlines anymore. I like interesting brush kind of stuff.
Yeah, I used to be totally micron pilled. I was all about micron. And for years, like from when I was in high school until like just a few years ago, basically. And then once I started with the dip pen and I felt like I understood it again, or I finally understood it, then I felt like it was almost like driving a stick versus an automatic. I was like, I have more control over this thing. Also, George Pratt, we were copying classics with the dip pen for that class, including Frazetta stuff that I was copying. And he blew my fucking mind with this. He's like, people, want to know what artists are lining with and making their ink drawings with. One of the ways that I can tell you, when we zoom in, you can see he's showing Frazetta stuff, and he's showing where Frazetta's used the brush and where he's used the pen and all these different things. And he says one way that you can see the pen is when you zoom in, you can see the person's heartbeat in the fucking line. Like, as you're holding it, you're slowly pulling the line. There are tiny, like, it's not a perfect line. It's not digital, right? You can see the blood pumping through your fucking hand as you're holding the pen. And I was like, like, that's what art's all about. That's so special and crazy. Like, I want my heartbeat in the line. So anyways, that I was like, then I was obsessed with the pen, like, I'm in.
Sold you there.
Yeah. And he wasn't even trying to be like heady or emotional. I'm just a person who like cries at everything. So I was like, that's so cool.
So you don't get that same effect with the brush then, I guess, because there's not the metal, the contact.
I think there's more fibers touching at the same time. So you're getting, it's almost smoother or something, maybe, but the brush is sick. Like, no shade to the brush. And he was showing us all these guys using the brush too. I just got
it's just preference, and I think for, you correct me and you offer your own thing, but like when you're learning art and stuff too, I think it's good to like, you need to take something and you need to take it to a level, not mastery, but like comfortability. So for me, it's like, I'm going to keep working on brush and get that to comfortability before I even pick up the dip pen, just because it's better to like not be just average at both, but be really good at one and then pick up another, I
totally agree. And it can be really frustrating when you feel like you're doing a shit job using a new medium. It's very daunting. It scares me a lot. And you want to feel like you're doing a good job and you're being a pro. And it's actually, I don't know, risking it with a new medium is like really scary. And you just got to do it because it's going to level you up. But I was going to hype myself up. Like, now I got to share this thing I did with this new medium. Yeah. But fuck yeah, trying new stuff.
Let's pull up some of your art. Talk about more techniques and stuff as we go through that.
So let's do it.
All right. So just starting out, we got 2 paintings here. And then I have a work in progress for the one on the left. But do you mind talking a little bit about it?
Yeah, so the one on the left I just did for Necrotic Gnome, for Gavin and Necrotic Gnome, and their Dolman Wood book. And huge shout out to David Hoskins, who got me that gig. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Helping me get in to do some of that work. It's the top right corner is going to be a like a block of stats and text for the book. So it's like it's a tabletop role playing game, and these are all these are for various books for it, like the monster manual, the player's guide. This one is, Gavin told me I could do whatever I wanted, basically. So he said it had to be like, well, we went over a couple ideas, and I was like, what about red caps? Because I love red caps. They're bad. And I've been trying to, I'm like, I'm not going to make it whimsical. I'm going to make them evil. And then I did it. I'm like, fuck, it's whimsical again. But
whimsical and evil. Yeah.
A little evil too. So yeah, that's what that is.
God, I just love sorry, I'm going to gush a little bit, and you're just going to have to deal with the flattery if that's all right. But my God, you captured the emotions of the characters so well. And that's something that's missing so often in art, is like actually getting the message across of how you're supposed to feel when you look at it. So technically it's awesome. You got this warmth in the front, you got the cools in the back. So there's a nice, differentiation there. All the colors like on that castle kind of rock, like so unique, and like there's enough variety there that it like reads as like really organic, even though it's a structure. But man, like those people up front, you can just like feel them being like apprehensive and the emotions on the face. So super cool.
Thank
I
you.
love
I
it.
was scared because it's like this is a thing that I struggle with. Tell me if you struggle with this. The
Yeah.
When I try to draw feelings on people's faces, like this is a good example. Like obviously they're like, "Oh no, not an evil fucking gnome." Like if it was like brutal or grim, sometimes it's going to look more serious, right? Like it's going to look more like Renaissance style, where it's more informed by life, and we don't actually have our eyes bulging out of our heads when we're scared. That's like cartoon shit. But
Right.
on the other hand, you do want to convey the story, and you want it to like you want to pump it up a little bit. So
It
I'm
just
like,
feels right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm always riding that line. Yeah, it felt right at the time. I'm always riding the line between like, don't make it too cartoony, but also like give it the big feel.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm glad you dig it.
I can relate. I mean, I know what you mean. Sometimes I feel like my stuff's in between being realistic and like having some like cartoony elements. And that's such a common insult that people say is like something looks cartoony, but like,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, do you like cartoons? Like if they're well done, is not like I think some of the best artists are for the most part not people anyone knows, but they work behind, making some of the good movies like a reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, God, this could be the second episode I mentioned this.
let's go.
I have you seen the latest Puss in Boots movie?
No, but I heard it was a banger. I actually heard it was
It's
really good.
absolutely amazing, and the
Yeah,
art style and the animation and the movement. I think you'd love it. Like it's
I
so
gotta check
good.
it out. You're like
But
the
like,
third person to tell me that I gotta go watch the Puss in Boots movie.
dude, it's so good. But like, someone's gonna hear this like twice. But I I guess my point is like I think capturing gesture and motion, the people who did it the best are animators, worked at like Disney and I guess DreamWorks or whatever for
Yes,
those
dude.
things. But
Yes.
like you can learn so much from those kind of animators. And like on YouTube, good instructors, Aaron Blaze, who was one
Mm,
of the primary animators and artists for Lion King. And you can see
yeah,
how he can capture emotion through those, creatures. So
absolutely.
just amazing stuff. It's way more
Yeah.
difficult than people realize to make convincing, strong cartoon related stuff. And I'm not even saying that's for this, but it like the thing on the right here. I mean, I love all your work, but this one compositionally, like everything's just framed up so well. It's one of my favorites you've done for sure.
Okay, so I feel like it's funny because the one on the right, I did during that Scott Fisher class that I took,
Yeah,
and I think it doesn't matter for me to say this, but we showed this to art directors, right? To art directors that I would want to work for, and they were like, "This is not good." They were like, "Not
really.
only is this," they were like, "This is not good," and it was so bad. That was a great class. Scott Fisher was awesome. If anyone's thinking about taking a class from him, do it. And the art directors gave me good feedback that I take to heart. So thank you for that. Honestly, like this isn't like a negging on anybody thing. This is like a me having like a private cry moment. But literally, the group chat, all my angelic fucking classmates. Okay, I'm like probably the oldest person in the class. I'm 36, and um all the other kids in the class are probably more like in their 20s, and we're all nerds, we're all trying to learn from a pro about gaming illustration, and we're all into that stuff. And I get this response from the one of the art directors, and it's one of those ones where she just goes, you're just not there yet. You're just not there. Technically, you're not there. And the people, and then I also got feedback that it was too old fashioned, that it's like old school. It would never work for modern gaming stuff. And the chat in the side, and like, it was an online class. The
Yeah.
chat, all of my sweet sweet fucking classmates being like, it's okay, Ellie. You know, they told Frazetta that he was too old fashioned too. And look where he went. And like, don't take it so hard, Ellie. Like, you know, you can do it. Like trying to encourage me, like, you know, like pump me back up because it was such a scalding review that I was getting from these art directors on this painting. But I loved it. I had a blast making it. And I felt like I turned a corner with this in a personal way, where for the first time ever, I was like, you know what? I'm going to really wave my freak flag with this. I'm going to like express a different feeling than I usually do, that I feel strongly, which is like complete chaotic insanity. And even if it comes out a little playful, that's just me. So, you know, I had a lot of fun with it.
I mean, I love it. I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, old fashioned, I understand that, but that's what you do, right? I mean, your art has an homage to the past, and that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah. For me, part of it, when we didn't even get on like the 4, because I can just go forever, on the 4 like artists who influenced me the most, all of the 90s artists that I fucking worship, who did all this stuff that like, I wanted to be like, but I copied 90s magic cards like religiously to get my style as well. It's too old fashioned. I was like, it won't work in gaming art now because I copied the stuff that I had growing up. Does that make sense? So I was like, no, like what like some kind of twisted, cursed result to get. Be like, I was so obsessed with all the shit you guys were making back when I was a kid that then I was like, as an adult, I'm like, ta-da, I did it. And they're like, yo, that's really like not very modern looking. And I was like, fuck, but I was copying you. You know what I mean?
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to be like one of the people in the chat, you know, just buttering you up. But if you're going to be, I mean, you're even working, you know, in traditional media. So like that automatically to me makes it seem like it's not, you know, what a normal gaming company would want. But you obviously you're secure on all this. But dude, this piece is fucking awesome. I see Mike Plug in this one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for noticing a cool influence who isn't just like the usual Brian Froud, who I love. Obviously I love, but yeah, thank you for that.
Okay. I'm right that this is the thumbnail sketch for that, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about these measurements and stuff that you have on there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on the struggle bus with numbers. I always have been. I was like a stay after school kid for math and science.
Same.
And so were you?
Yeah, I had like tutor and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But look at us now. We don't have to do them. Well, actually, I did have to do the math for this is the problem. That's where it gets me. So it's for a book, right? And there's going to be text in the corner. So he told me, he said, you know what? Just go all out and make it a whole page. But just make sure there's nothing important in this square in the corner because I'm going to put a text block there. So sometimes I get so stressed, it's hard for me to start the painting because I'm afraid of the numbers. I'm like, I don't know how to measure it. What if I measure it wrong? Inevitably, I do measure it wrong. So this is a little insight to how I'm trying to plan it out in advance.
Oh, and what's the size of the painting then? Are you painting it at scale or a little bit bigger and shrunk down?
So he gives me millimeters because they're English over there. And then I was like a fool. This is what I'm talking about. Like, I don't know if people inches. Bro, I don't know if people use the term learning disabled anymore. Okay, but but this is describing myself, so fuck it. I am just learning disabled. This is a ruler. This is the one that I use. It's got inches and millimeters on it because it's a fucking ruler. But I literally was Googling the number, and that's what you see here. 3.42 inches. No, dude, don't do that. Just millimeters. Now they know that I've done this, but it's too late because they already hired me and they got the art, so it's too late. But that was, it's like me, like, oh geez, old Gil trying to the fucking numbers here. And like I said, a lot of them come out wrong, and I have to like in Photoshop, like that's crooked or something, But this one turned out okay.
Oh man! In your final then that you send, do you do any like brightening or anything in Photoshop, or is it look pretty much exactly like this?
Yeah, it looks like this. Although sometimes you scan stuff and the colors are like, I don't know if I have it.
Oh,
but
I know the feeling. My red is super sensitive on my scanner.
Yeah, or like I find it with my blues and greens. I'm not sure exactly what the story is, but like I'm like looking for this painting. The blues and greens are like sometimes I don't know, it just is it's a little off. So sometimes I'll edit them a little bit, but only try to make it match the original. Oh, here it is. It's like
here, let me blow you up.
I don't know. It's like wait, can you turn on my light? It's so it's like dark in here now.
Yeah, no, I see exactly what you mean.
Yeah, so it's pretty close. Shit.
Using cold press paper?
Yeah. I use 300-pound cold press. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Wow, fuck, sorry. I'm like can't figure out where I am on this thing.
Oh,
yeah, so it's like pretty close. You can kind of get an idea.
I've shifted to the 300-pound as well for the most part. It makes a big difference than the 140, that you usually find.
Yeah. The 300-pound can take a beating. Like
exactly.
You can, and it does on mine quite a bit. I'm like reworking shit. So yeah. Do you like it?
Oh yeah. I've been using mostly hot press, but I have cold press. I have rough paper as well. They all have different advantages.
Yeah.
There's a big painting that I'm going to start soon that I've been procrastinating because you know how it is, watercolor. It's pretty hard. It's unforgiving. So I have to be like, I'm kind of mentally preparing myself for it. I'm doing like a pen and ink piece in the meantime. But
that's awesome. You got to warm yourself up to it so you're not so scared going in.
Well, yeah, and like I'll do some smaller stuff too because this is like a really big painting, and I want to do like one solid starting wash, and like you know how that is. Is that how you work as well? Like layered, or do you do like a wet on wet wash? Like what does it usually look like? Like, are you penning in first and then doing all that? You talk a little bit about that?
No, it's pencil. So everything starts with I pencil it really meticulously first, and I've tried different things. But the thing that I just keep coming back to is I just draw straight on the paper. It's actually these are actually hot press. Now that I'm thinking about it, I like agree with you. I'm not sure why. These are 300-pound hot press papers. So it's smooth. The cold press I do use sometimes, but I'm anal about the lines, and so I have like perfectly finished, refined, exact line work in pencil first, and I draw it straight on the 300-pound paper. There have been times when I've tried to trace from sketches, and I can do that sometimes. I'll rip a page out of the book, but if I trace from a sketch, then I really have to use 150-pound, and because my light
through, your light board,
it just doesn't really go through that well. So so I like the 300-pound so much better that most of the time I'll just draw directly on. And I don't ink it. I don't line it with ink, but I do go in and I do the values with ink lately. I didn't used to do that, and I still don't do it with all of my paintings. If I want it to look lighter and softer, I won't do that. But I started watching, like whenever it was, like a year ago or something. No, it's been a couple years now. I started watching Adrian Smith's YouTube videos that he does. I watch those religiously. I love just sitting and like listening to him talk about stuff and getting the vibe for how he does it. And he blocks in everything with ink first. And so I started doing that. I was like, if Adrian Smith does it, I want to try it. And actually, it's totally side note. When I got that brutal review, I don't know what came over me, but I DM'd Adrian Smith to see if he would look at my stuff because I was feeling so like lost for a minute. Like, what is my life? Like, how could this?
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just feeling devastated. And he got back to me right away. It was incredibly kind and supportive and gave me really great feedback. So like, if anyone's ever wondered if he's like an incredibly cool dude, he is like very kind and supportive. So, fuck yeah. So go like subscribe and buy all his things for not just because he's an awesome artist, but also like he didn't have to like respond to some rando. You know what I mean? And he did.
Yeah, he didn't owe you anything.
No. And he gave me like tips about that stuff. So the ink, nowadays I'll go in and I'll do the values first in either walnut ink, which is brown, and transparent, or
kind of like an underpainting almost.
Yeah, I do an underpainting because Adrian Smith does it. So I was like, I want to try. And I felt like it made it so that I also use India ink for it sometimes, but it suddenly made it so that my values were better. Like I had already locked in the shadows and the values and the blacks in advance of the colors, and that made it like richer. So I've started doing that in the last few years.
So you did that on this painting here?
I did. Yeah, you can see it. I'm like in the, yeah, actually you can see it all over the place. Like in the hat of the hats of the red caps and stuff, there's shadows. The reason that it has a warm kind of golden feeling and stuff is because I washed it with walnut ink. So yeah, I have a lot of that in there. And then of course you end up painting on top of it, so you lose a bunch of it, but it's almost like a guide for me, like where I want ideally for the shadows to be. Does that make sense?
You know, it does. There's so many different ways to approach watercolor painting. And then are you doing gouache at the end for, like hazy effects? And like, for instance, the female character in the front here, her skirt is white. You're talking about doing a walnut ink, are you building on top of that with gouache, or how does it work?
No, so I learned in art schools to be anal about preserving the white of the page. And I'm not always perfect about that, but in her skirt, it's like the walnut is, you can see, let's see, oh my god, dyslexic.
I see. And then there's a little bit of like pure white there, or close to pure white. God.
I'm like mirrored something on the wrong one. You can see. Yeah. Yeah, and the beards too. Fuck. I think that the beards are like, god damn it. Oh, I suck at this. Fuck that. The beards of the red caps are more pure white because I'm trying to preserve the white of the page.
Yeah.
But I actually started using acrylic ink after taking that Scott Fisher class, and that's what's making it misty in the background.
Acrylic ink after you've done washes. And are you doing wet on wet washes, or dry paper and just layering?
I do a little bit of both, but mostly I'm doing dry. The wet on wet stuff I do is just for glowing. And after I took that class, I was like, oh fuck, my book's in the other room. After I took that class, I was like, that's what I love. Charles Vest too, who's also like a 70s fantasy illustrator. And although he's done a lot of modern stuff too, he did like the Earthsea, Ursula Le Guin's last version of Earthsea. He, I'm pretty sure, is putting white ink directly onto wet paper in order to make a glow around things. And so I started doing that after I took the class because I was like, I'm pretty sure that that's what's creating some of this glow in some of these old paintings. And that's worked for me. I'm not sure if that's what they're doing, but yeah, to make it like a will-o'-the-wisp or something.
That's cool. Yeah, there's so many different like watercolor type instructors out there, and all the instruction I've been getting, and it's led to kind of my style maybe being different than yours, is like highly wet on wet and then into dry at the end, but like do as much as you can when the paper's like pretty wet. And it leads to cool color transitions and stuff like that, you know.
Because it's soft and you're blending.
Exactly. I want it to be, yeah, like, because a lot of there's two types of watercolor. Like, so my stuff that's more my style and it's not just like landscapes or whatever, that I want it to look like colorized versions of what I'm just doing pen and ink. But I'll still use some of those techniques so that there's like weird color transitions and everything kind of like blends together, you know?
Yeah.
But then you lose definition, preciseness. So I try to make that up with like pen and ink. And then, I mean, everything's mixed media with that stuff. So I'm using markers, I'm using colored pencils. It's a smorgasbord. I've kind of, figured it out on my own. But I do sometimes landscapes. I'm trying to make it like the traditional pure watercolor, like the watercolor society kind of stuff. You know, those types of people. It's mostly older folks.
Very beautifully. That stuff that I've seen you do. Now I know you're doing wet on wet. It's a very soft, ethereal look that I really like. Yeah.
And I feel like that's maybe something, we're talking again, injecting new types of art styles, but with the understanding of metal and alternative culture and trying to fuse those so that there's unique stuff out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I think's cool with like how we're both doing it in our own way.
Yeah, that's inspiring me because then I'm like wondering, some of that stuff I was looking at on your page and I was like, that looks like classical in this way. And that's a thing with a lot of like heavy music album artwork, right? Is that it looks classical, like whatever the period is, like Baroque or Renaissance or whatever the fuck, it looks classical. And I think that's what a lot of these guys are looking for. They're looking for it to look timeless in this kind of way and serious in this kind of way. And that makes sense. It maybe matches the mood a little bit. It's grim.
Right.
And I struggle with that because of the cartoony part. So then I'm like, oh, maybe if I had done this background with wet on wet, maybe I wouldn't have had to labor over it so much with the acrylic. That's just gonna take some practice. I gotta try that. Now I'm ready to fire up the watercolors after this and see how I can put a background.
We're both learning. I'm very fascinated in this like underpainting ink thing. I gotta watch Adrian Smith do it and kind of dig in. But
go back to some of the early ones. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, enough about me. Let's keep it trucking. We got plenty of art to cover on. So 3 more paintings here.
Oh yeah. So I did this one for my husband. He asked for a goblin exploring cave. And I decided to just do it for him. So that was fun because I don't do a lot of, well, at the time I was doing more characters and less full backgrounds, and light source is really hard for me. So I was like, fuck it, we ball. I'm gonna like challenge myself on this. And it's not like perfect. There are a lot of things I would do different now, but I'm proud of it because it's me trying to create a world for the viewer with an environment. And I think that worked. So
totally.
That's what that is.
Let's think in the middle here. A little more like design oriented.
Yeah, that's Blythe from Elden Ring, because I'm a big video game nerd, and he's like my favorite. Well, definitely one of my fave characters from the game. So I just did that for fun, and that's just ink and mostly ink and just then watercolor on top. The cool thing about the ink underneath, again, you do all this black India ink under there, and then it's waterproof, obviously, so you can just paint really soft on top. So you get like that tough black sort of like look with like leather or metal or whatever, like armor, and then like a nice soft wash on top. So
it's like those, so the pure black things are kind of like those designy shapes that are jutting off the side and the bottom, and then there's a watercolor kind of piece on top that's a little bit lighter. Is that kind of what you're saying, or is there another?
I'm saying like I painted the whole thing, or first I did all the ink, all the black ink, and in this case I didn't use the walnut ink, I used the India ink, and so I made it look as sort of like I put in all my black first. And then I was able to take like a soft gray and like some pink and a little bit of yellow even. I had a really limited color palette. And so for me, that helped me to make it look less cartoony, less children's booky, because I'm really just, I already like hammered in all black first. It's in there, it's waterproof, it's solid. And then I just put a couple muted tones in my watercolor, literally right on top of the black ink. And that works really well for me in terms of incorporating that black ink look with the soft watercolor colors.
Okay.
That,
Interesting.
did I explain that?
No, I think I'm getting it. I've just never thought about. It seems like they're more fused together than my brain would initially think they should be. You know,
well, that's
what I mean?
cool. That means it's like melding in
It's working. That's why I'm like puzzled. I gotta try it. I really like that design. I feel like it would do really well in like an artist market, just like little prints, you know, like those like tiny ones, and a lot of those like around our house. I could see this one.
Yeah, that one I've done. I'm bad about selling my prints, dude. I'm really bad about that. But when I was at the shop I was at before, they were like way more into that, and they sold a lot of these for me.
Sick.
Yep.
Well, in terms of video games, I don't play at all. Like, so you're tattooing, you're painting, and you're playing video. Like, how do you kind of find time for it all? Because like, I find sometimes it's difficult to dedicate time. For me, it would be reading, but even then, I like do not read as much as I want to. But then I'm also not drawing as much as I want to. Like, how do you juggle these interests?
I have no fucking idea. I really don't know. I also like to read. No, part of it, I don't have children. So like being like a person in my 30s without children, that's like a big part of it.
Here, I have no excuse.
Then I think I'm actually, you know what? It comes at the expense sometimes of some of my socializing, which thankfully my husband is awesome at and gets me out a lot. I love people, but I get obsessive into my world, and he does a good job extracting me. So if it wasn't for that, I think I would be even more of a homebody, but I spend a lot of time at home like an absolute fucking psycho doing this shit. Yeah, I don't have an explanation. I don't know how. I don't play. I play specific video games, and I play like only one or two at a time, and I play them completely through. And then I become obsessed and I collect everything from the video game. Like I have everything Dark Souls. Like I have like the sword that you sit at in the bonfire. My friend made me like a real one that I had installed in my front yard. You know, like if I'm into something, I'm really fucking into it. So I'm gonna find a way. I'm gonna find a way to do it. Yeah.
Cool. What about this one on the right here?
That is also from Dolmenwood for Necrotic Gnome. And it's a creature from the Monster Manual. It's called a gloam, and it's like a bad thing that's like made up of crows. It's like made up of dead crows. And there's already an illustration in the book of one that looks fucking awesome and very different. And he was like, try your hand at, do a different version, basically. And the other one looks more like plague doctory and more humanoid. Okay. And so I wanted to make a version that was more like looked like it was falling apart and coming together, like it was really in motion of being like made of birds.
I love it so much.
Oh, thanks, Lee. Thanks.
Dude, the little touches of red on the fingers is like such a nice little highlight. And then you have this really like mature and like muted color scheme all around it. Just so cool. Like there's like a good element of like restraint in there, you know?
Thanks. This one I was like, no, I really appreciate that. Sometimes I struggle with that because I'm like, I want to put every color in.
Dude, same.
So I get that. You know what I mean? It's like colors are cool. So yeah.
But you like this one as well?
Yeah, I do. I'm really proud of this one. I was looking at a lot of John Blanche art at the time, and you know, this is like I'm in my Warhammer era of like obsessing over like how did they do it, and
John just released a book. Daniel Shaw was telling me about it. Have you seen it? It's like up for pre-order.
Dude, wait. My friends are all like deranged the way that I'm deranged. Is it this one?
No, there's like this black sketchbook. It's a whole different style for him because he has that painting style. But there's like this pen and ink book that it's up for pre-order right now. Daniel was like, "Dude, I just splurged and bought this," and I was like, "Maybe I should buy it." I mean, I looked at it. I thought the art was really cool. It's more I don't know. It's more like dark, kind of whimsical art. I don't know. You might dig it, but if you go on John Blanch's website, if it's still up,
Yeah.
I think you.
Oh,
I
I'll
mean, you're a book
definitely get
collector
it.
too, so you know how it is.
Yeah. And I'm a psycho completionist, so it's like as soon as I find out that there's another book that I don't have about the artist or with other art that's not in my other books, then I gotta have it. I gotta have it.
Yeah, dude.
I get all,
I spent like $100 just trying to get a piece, like finish my Rick Griffin collection, and that's just like comic books. I know the feeling.
Oh, wait,
oh yeah.
Are you a comic guy?
Ish. I'm
Okay, great.
Yeah, I love the art, but I'm not. I'm actually relatively new to it. Let's put it that way. I love it, but it wasn't part of me growing up. But very, very much into it now, and I'm trying to collect a lot of the underground California style comics. Robert Crumb, Greg Irons, Rick Griffin.
Dude,
that's the kind of stuff I'm trying to get into.
Fuck yeah, that's so sick. Greg Irons is like the very, very rare early tattoo and fantasy art nerd.
Exactly.
Also, he did D&D stuff. He was an old tattoo head, and it's like he stepped off a fucking curb wrong, got hit by a bus, and died in his 30s. Are you kidding me? That could be like I feel like I'm descended from. No, that's like very brazen of me actually to say that, but he's a tattooer. He's a tattooer and a fantasy nerd. So again, I'm like, Dad. But yeah, that's sick. That's sick.
Dude, I love his stuff. Like that. And that's the kind of stuff that, because I don't really want to go hyper realistic with my stuff. I want to keep the stylized, the energy, kind of like
your
you.
hand.
Like, and just like we're not going to remember all these artists. This is my hot take. All these artists that are hyper realistic and skilled, we're not going to remember any of them 20 years from now. So why even aim to be that type of person? But I mean, every artist I've had on, they've been like, the art stuff I don't like. It's the highly realistic, 5 foot by 5 foot portrait of Dwayne the Rock Johnson. Like, I don't like that type of art. That's the shit that most people make fun of.
I think for me, that's again, I guess we're doing like little takes, little baby takes here.
Yeah.
When it comes to fantasy art, for me, it's the pursuit of what's in your mind. It's your hand. It's like my teacher said, it's Frank Frazetta's heartbeat in the line, dude. Like it is literally the human experience, like creating art, especially from your fantasy world, whether it's dark or light or whatever, like that is just an expression of you. Literally nobody can jack that. Nobody can copy that because it came out of your hand. And if you're just trying to emulate, that is sick. That's cool. And I respect the fuck out of like people who can do that hyper real stuff, but that's not what I'm addicted to. I'm addicted to expressing myself through this stuff, and also seeing other people's people are bearing their soul in their art. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the 100%
cool shit. Yeah. So we got Inner Arma on the left, and then 2 pieces here. And I mean, not that we're in a big rush, but I remember we actually do have quite a bit of slides, so you go whatever pace you want. Just
I'll just
go quick. Go.
Yeah. So the Inner Arma one, Mike asked me to do that. Mike is a really great friend, and we met and instantly bonded like a long time ago, like maybe 10 years ago, about being like sad boys. And so I think he let me do my own sad boy thing with it. And it was rethinking some of the elements from the original Sundown album artwork. So that was super fun for me. I absolutely fucking love those guys and loved doing that for them. The middle one, again, it's a pure like the little kid in me. I did that for Blazing Worlds for Jonica, who I did Ekphrastic Beasts with and for. So that's a goblin mech. It's a creature that's going to be in the next whatever installment. And of those books for tabletop role-playing games, I was trying to channel some of the Warhammer energy, but also it's
You can see a little bit of the Warhammer there. Yeah.
This is like one of my first attempts at trying something where I just really like let it rip on it being like not giving a fuck, I guess, not trying to be anal about things, just letting it go. I'm really scared of drawing machinery. So I was like, this might be literally bad. So just pray for me. Yeah. Okay. I'm glad I'm not alone.
No, I'll always choose organic subject matter over buildings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. Same. It's way more fun to draw. But this got me into it. Now I'm like, it's funny because I liked mechs as a kid. And so now I'm like, a goblin mech is a trash mech. So I can just do whatever I want. That's my dream mech. So that's what that is. And then the one on the right, I drew during class with George Pratt while I was learning the ink techniques from him, and he's teaching and I was just drawing as we were going. Again, I was trying to embrace, I didn't really get into this too much, and I won't like be a pain in the ass like blabbering about this forever, but like I just trying to be like the part of me that I don't always get to draw or paint. It's not at all whimsical. Like I let me try to paint some stuff that nobody would be like, this could work in a kid's book. Like, let me tap into that part of myself, that like totally insane, like, you know, like blackened part of me that is dying to come out. And every time I put the pen to the paper, it somehow doesn't look right. So I really tried with this one, and I felt like even his like leather gloves, I was like, that's exactly the blackness that I wanted. So yeah.
He looks like he's up to no good. But the splatter effects that you kind of have around there, is that like one of the techniques you were trying out in the class, or what's up?
Yeah, it's a toothbrush. Yep.
Okay.
I dipped it. Yeah, exactly. Just like you get your whole thumb all black, but yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
What about these?
The one on the left, I also did for Jonica. I have done, who I did Ekphrastic Beasts with, Blazing Worlds. Shout out to Jonica, who's hired me to do a lot of really special artwork. We were going to do a night series based on flowers, nights and flowers. And I chose gentian as the flower because gentian is the flower that we make the stencil pigment, the stencil paper that we place tattoos with.
Oh, cool.
That the purple on the stencil, that's gentian violet. So I wanted to do gentian. I don't know. I was just like my tattoo world. So I made a gentian night.
I love this one. I mean, I picked it as the background for a reason. And as I was looking in the background, there's so many cool little like details. And I guess sometimes you see knights and they look stiff, and this does not look stiff at all. And then there's also a sense of repetition in the armor, which you have. But then there's like, on like some of the mail, you'll emphasize different colors in like a cool way. Like, I don't know, just like there's enough like color variety around so that it feels both fantastical and like creative. But there's also like, if you look in real life, repetition is still within, there's diversity within it. You know what I mean? I might be kind of talking my ass, but I just love this piece a lot.
Thank you. I think the thing with armor is that it does repeat. It's like it's mechanical in a way. And so like you have to bring attention to the texture of it and have it set apart from everything else that it's on. Like if you give it the same treatment as everything else, it doesn't look right, you know? So I was trying to do like
shine and reflection of color from other, like the green could be reflected from the environment. Sorry to cut you off there. Yeah.
No, you didn't. We're just vibing. Yeah, no, that's exactly what That's exactly what I was trying to do too. It was like, I'm not good at lighting, but I wanted it to be glowing, like will-o'-the-wisps. I love that idea about like it's the sailor's peril. It's the thing that draws you into the swamp and to your grisly end. And so the will-o'-the-wisps, I put a couple of those little guys in, and I wanted that to be reflecting off the armor. So I'm glad it looks like that.
Oh, it's awesome.
Thanks.
What about this the middle here?
Oh yeah, that's the Battle Master album I did. I've done 2 for them now. Those are my great friends. I fucking love them as people, and I love their music. It means so much to me to be able to do art for them. This one, Andy, who's the singer, and he's our one of our besties, and art directed me on this. His mind is like totally, he's like talk about like a world, like an unhinged world in his mind. So he's directing me about how he wants things to look, and we really work well together, I feel like. So with this one, I was really trying to practice more. I was like, this one, I'm going to make this one more brutal. This one's going to look grimmer. I'm going to make it look frostier a little bit, like that cool light coming in. And my friend Jean helped me with that. I like texted her. If you haven't already checked out her stuff, she's awesome. Jean D'Angelo. I just texted her and I was like, how can I make the light look cold? And she kind of helped me with that. But I wanted it to look like old school, grim piles of ill-begotten treasure, and like this forlorn dude sitting on the pile. That was all Andy's idea, and it was super fun to make.
Cool shadows too, kind of like Mignola-esque, with like strong cast shadows. Really neat.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the black, the totally flat black background, that's super Mignola-y, to like cut an entire area out into black.
Out, yeah. Very cool.
Yep.
This one on the right here, I have some in progress as well. I think it's a little bigger here, so I'll hold on it for a second.
Okay. That one I did for a Dark Souls art show that Karmazid got me on. Thank you, Karmazid. He love his stuff. I have a couple of his little original. Cool, dude. Yep. He hit me up, or I guess the super sweet director of the show did. It was an art show in Australia, and he was basically like, I guess they had a couple people drop off from the show, or maybe they had to kind of drop some people. I'm not exactly sure. It sounds like like not every metal dude who makes cool artwork has cool politics, and so they had to like maybe shuffle some things around and find somebody who like had a better take on the world or something. So very grateful that Karma's had thought of me for that. So this is Godric the Grafted from Elden Ring, one of my fave characters. He's a boss. He's like disgusting, very brutal, and sad. He's like sad and brutal, which is the best combination to me. Or you know what it is?
Real human, yeah, human emotion.
Yeah, it's like agony. Like that's the thing. If you combine like sadness and anger, you know what I mean? There's like some.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a feeling that I identify more with that than anger, because I feel sad a lot. I don't necessarily just feel angry a lot. So like feeling like agonized over something I identify with. So I was like, I'm going to do this character who's clearly in agony after having all these limbs grafted to him. And so also I was taking that class. So I tried doing an ink wash over the whole thing, black ink over the entire thing, and it made it look more grim. So I was like, all right, I'm learning.
Was it just an even layer of really thin, like you just watered it down a lot?
Exactly. And I learned that from George. I brought it into critique, and I was like, will you please look at this for me? And I know it's not for the class, but I just need a little help. And he was like, it's put a whole wash on it, and it's going to, and then brighten it up in post with opaque white later. So I did. I used white ink for the highlights on this. I tried to save a little bit of the paper, but mostly I put white ink for the highlights. And I feel like the black ink wash or the gray ink wash really made it more grim. And so I was like, fuck yeah. Let's
So
go.
you already had painted a lot of it, then you did a black wash over it.
Yeah, I had already done all the black period, basically. Like I told you before, I popped in all the black. And then I showed it to him in that state. And I hadn't done the color yet. And he was like, it's looking good, but you should just go ahead and, don't be scared, basically. He was like, put a whole fucking wash
because
on
it
that.
is a scary thing. That's such a commitment there,
It is so scary,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What if you fuck up the whole thing?
It's fascinating, man. I've never even thought of some of these techniques before. This is really cool.
Taking classes is like one of the joys of my life. So, yeah, anything that I've learned, I'm always excited to tell people about it because it is thrilling to me.
Yeah. No, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So you got the thumbnail here, and you kept pretty close to that the entire time. I mean, do you often do like a lot of thumbnails and then you just pick the one that resonates with you, or is a lot of times the first idea you have the one that you really end up going with?
It's a mix. It sometimes it is the first one. I would say 50% of the time it's the first one I do, and then the other 50% it's one that I've evolved more. Yeah, like after I've loosened up. Yeah, but here you can see
a shit ton of thumbnailing today, so it's like top of my mind right now.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
For a commission piece?
Just personal. I want to make you probably see like other artists do this, but I don't have a ton of experience with working with bands, so I figured I'll just do a ready-made, make it real cheap, and just put it up. So I'm just working on something that's not going to be like a giant thing. So I was like doing some thumbnails. I want to do like a a portal creature thing.
Fuck yeah. Oh, hell yeah. So that's going to be so slick.
Like I was like playing around with some different ideas and shapes,
I love that.
I kind of like this one on the right because he's kind of got a little bit of swagger here. He's like, he's a gargoyle hanging around a portal.
Can you put it a little closer? Oh, is the portal in the middle? Hell yeah. Yeah, I love that.
And then I had, this is like kind of a color kind of idea.
Nice. Oh, awesome. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's all just kind of exploring,
Yeah, absolutely. I like a bunch of those. Have you seen any of Justine Jones's artwork?
I don't think so.
You should check out her stuff.
What was the name of the artist that you asked for advice on that other piece too? You made it sound like it was a cool person.
Yeah, that was Jean D'Angelo. Yeah, so Justine and Jean are two of my Philly friends, who are part of that I met through showing at the convent because of Jeremy. Yeah, and now they're like crucial friends of mine. They're awesome women, and they make really cool art. But that one of those illustrations or those thumbnails you just showed me, it's who's the artist? Well, Justine is really influenced by P. Craig Russell, but actually it might be, God damn it, I shouldn't get up. It's too bad you're not here. I would get up and run to my other room and grab this book. I'll send it to you later. Because you're gonna.
Yeah, or we can do it. We could do it off air or whatever too. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. But I love that swirling black, like a portal is a fucking awesome idea. You can make like that, like Lovecraftian galaxy feeling, and then tying a figure in, then you get like the mood of the figure too.
Yeah, and I was just thinking something, hopefully that I don't spend more than like 5 or 6 hours on, and then I can just make it ready-made, So
hell yeah, that rules.
Well, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, another question. What hardness or what type of pencil do you use so that you don't lose the pencil when you're doing watercolor and like ink and stuff? Because I have a problem with that sometimes. Like I have to use a really dark pencil to not lose it.
I actually use an H. I use a couple different ones.
Just an H.
Yeah. So, but I use a couple different. I use HB. I use H and I use 2B. Let me see. It just depends on which part of the. Let's see. Yeah, I'm looking at my shit right now.
I've been using these lately. These Blackwing pencils. I don't know if you've ever tried these.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Really
I have a
nice.
couple of those. I haven't used them, but I have them. I'm spilling the shit all over myself.
Their hair dark, but they feel good.
Yeah. I like this for the extreme precision. So I use a mechanical, and
oh nice.
So I have one. I have different ones for different. This is a 9 and this is a 5, and so this is really thin and this is thicker, and then I'll have like this will be B or 2B and this will be H, and that really helps me. Honestly, most of this line work is probably HB. Most of the stuff on the painting, and then you do lose a little bit of it. So it's just my process to be fucking insane and anal and do all that fucking chainmail and just to lose it. But it's how I know where it is.
Yeah. Every painting's a learning opportunity. You know how it is. Like you never really feel like you got it completely figured out, especially in watercolor where there's no undo button.
No, if you ever have it figured out, then you don't have it figured out.
Yeah. All right. How about these two?
So yeah, sick. So that's the shirt I did for Revocation. My roommate and great friend Dan, who's in Artificial Brain, he also used to play guitar for Revo. So that's how I know those guys. And and so Dave hit me up to do a couple t-shirts for them, and that's one of them. It's based on, I'm a fucking ding dong, and I don't remember. The Yellow King is from a book series, right? That's like the True Detective. It like shows up in True Detective a little bit.
Yeah, like the first season of True Detective with Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, they refer to the Yellow King.
Yeah, I think yeah.
It might.
My wife just recently watched it. I watched it when it originally came out, but I was like, walking through the room and stuff.
Yeah, it was a great show. That's the first time I heard about the Yellow King, because I think one of the characters is like referencing it or something. But when Dave told me about this, it's from a book, or maybe a short story, like a Ray Bradbury short story, something like that. That's probably not right, but sorry, Dave. But it's from a story, and it's about a guy it's almost Lovecraftian, pouring over some kind of information, some kind of knowledge, and losing your fucking mind as a result. So I was just trying to show a cool guy losing his mind after reading a tome.
That's cool.
So,
man, shirt designs are kind of harder than you might think, because you have to a lot of times make something kind of floating and then actually complete at the same time. Like it's a bit different than composing a whole scene where it's when you don't really know when it's done, but you know what I mean? Like, if it's there, but sometimes with shirts, it's just for me, I'm kind of prone to overthinking it, because you kind of just want a floating image, but you're so used to grounding and things.
Oh yeah. No, it is a completely different thing. And I've done a lot of t-shirts, and I feel like I've gotten better over the years, but people who just do t-shirts, that's its own art, and I'm still really struggling with that. I'm still really trying to figure that out. So honestly, I feel like this was one of my prouder t-shirt moments, and I felt like it was the image was contained, and it works on a shirt, but I struggle with that a lot. So yeah, you're totally right. It's its own art form, making cool t-shirts, making good t-shirts.
I'll just, get Mark Riddick's opinion, whenever I'm creating something, be like, hey, is this hitting right or not? Because that guy whips out shirts like that, man. It's just
how the fuck?
He's a wizard.
Yeah, but it's good to have friends like that you can run your ideas by.
He's I flatter him too much. He's a piece of shit. I'm just kidding. But no, him and I are very close, and he's been very helpful for me.
Yeah,
y'all's this one on the right. Oh, go ahead.
Nothing. I was just he seemed like a real sweetheart from the video.
Oh, 100%. This one on the right you posted today, man. It's really cool and a bit different too. Definitely darker.
Yeah, this is what I did this 7 years ago, which that's why I was like, I never repost old shit. Maybe I should just repost it to, I don't know, remind people that I existed, or something. And also because it was for Sun, it was for a show, it was for an art show that a bunch of people made art for Sun, who was playing, they were playing in Boston. And yeah, so it was part of that. So I was like, well, that's music related. Guess I'll share that too.
That like tilted horizon line just like is unsettling. Like there's like horror in this one, you know?
That's
Like
why I
feel
was
it.
trying to make it more horror. Yeah, I did that on
Yeah.
purpose, the horizon line, because I love horror movies, and they say they'll tilt the camera to fuck you up. So I was like, all
Yeah.
right, gotta try to make it not whimsical. Tilt the camera.
So 7 years later, you still like this one, or how do you feel on it?
You know, I actually really like this one a lot. There are a lot of things that I would do really differently now, including like the girl on the right, like the one who's more out of the water standing. Like
Yeah.
her face is like busted, like in terms of the like it doesn't, her face like doesn't wrap around her skull correctly. But
Yeah.
at the same time, she's supposed to look kind of fucky and scary. So you know what? I'm gonna let myself have a pass on it.
I mean, yeah. I like the no, I mean, I've
know what I
made that
mean?
mistake a million times, so
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I can relate. The way you did the those distant like trees and roots, that definitely is like Frazetta. You know, you could see
That's the other thing. I was looking at this today, and I was thinking,
yeah.
this was when I was looking at so much, like 10 years ago, I was looking at so much Frazetta, and you can
Yeah.
see the Frazetta. This is wet on wet, and it is definitely trying to emulate Frazetta with the tree on the left in the background. You can tell that blue is like Frazetta blue. So yeah, 100%.
I mean, look, everybody copies Frazetta, so I mean, it's fair game at this point for the most part. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
I like this piece a lot.
thanks. Yeah, I think it's okay. I feel like we gotta like call out the people we're worshiping, because it's like gives us power in its own way. It's like, I'm not trying to be Frazetta, but I do worship Frazetta, so it's okay. You know, like it's okay for us to see our influences in there, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
This is cool because
Oh
it's
yeah.
like some work in progress kind of shots here for both of these.
Yeah.
One thing,
I,
the crease on that paper, that on that rat, doesn't that drive you nuts, or is that just me?
it's how I had to let it. Sometimes I'll purposely, and in this case, I did draw across the whole sketchbook on the crease because it helps me
Oh,
let
okay.
go. It helps
That
me
makes
let go
sense.
of being too anal. Yeah, the sketchbook is like a diary. It's just for me, and I do share pieces of it, but because it's fun. But like, it's how I loosen the fuck up.
Oh, same here. I mean, you saw how sloppy my stuff is. It's for me, and the more experience I get, the worse my sketchbook looks. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
that way. Go ahead, though.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I think that my sketchbook has like really beautiful finished pages, and then a lot of it is just trash. I think that's the
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, it's just, you got to. But I wanted to share it partly because a friend of mine recently, also an amazing artist who you should check out, Martin McCoy, he
Okay.
was asking me, he was at the house and I was scanning some stuff for him, and he was like, what does the painting look like before it gets to this extreme tight pencil precision? And that bottom rat is what it looks like. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, it doesn't start tight. It starts really shitty. So,
Oh, it looks great though. I love how it looks. Even at that stage. I mean,
thanks.
you got the face pretty tight, but yeah, I mean, looks good.
That's the first place I want to tighten up, because that's the fun part.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I feel like
yeah,
this would be
was,
like the super badass rat in like the Secrets of Nim or something. Like the one that like Executioner rat or something.
yeah, these are supposed to be Skaven from Warhammer. So I was like
Okay.
going through and reading the Skaven. I was reading like one of the Skaven books that I have. And end up like getting really into the lore because there's so much heady Warhammer lore. And I was like so inspired by all the Skaven stuff. Also, Skavens are super crusty. Like they're just crusty. And so I was feeling really into that. Normally I'm like kind of a goblin gal, but I was just feeling really into the Skaven. So I wanted to draw some. And then the other guy is a Minotaur I'm doing a Minotaur sleeve soon. So I was trying to get the ideas out, but also I was inspired by the Warhammer Beastmen. So yeah, a little crossover with that.
They're so good, man. Like even just
Thanks.
your, black and white or gray or whatever. Like it's always awesome to see full paintings, but then also just really good drawings. So good.
Thanks. I love to see the artists that I love. I want to see everything in their head. And I love to see their sketchbooks. So.
Oh yeah. That's the fun stuff to collect as well. It's like the sketchbooks and stuff and the things from like conventions.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah. So just real quick, I just included that to show like that's what it looks like in my sketchbook, and then that's what it looks like when I tattooed it. So
you got almost everything figured out, ahead of time.
Exactly. It's already solved. All the puzzles already been solved. Yeah.
But you had to work around the frog's feet there. You had to move the fern a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, no, I did have to change some things to make it tattooable, and that's always going to happen. You know what I mean? A tattoo is just different. It's not the same as a drawing. It has to be tattooable. So I have to do some little stuff, but you can tattoo your fantasy drawings. So to all the people who told me you couldn't, you were wrong. Oh, and this on
is like,
all right.
Yeah.
It's just another process thing from the dolmen woodwork.
And okay, but you can maybe then see the walnut ink you were talking about, or is this not even at that stage? Because maybe it's like a little.
Okay. No, you're right. It's all of the light brown is walnut ink, and all of the black is that India ink.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're different. The India ink is going to give you that cool metal, like leather, look, and or like a black hole, and the walnut is more like a soft, glowing underpainting. It's sepia, really.
It's really cool. The walnut ink. What brand do you use? I might buy some.
It's on my desk. Do you want me to afterwards? Maybe I can grab it.
Okay. You can tell me later. That's fine.
Okay, I'm gonna remind myself. Yeah, it's awesome. Highly recommend. Again, I learned that from Adrian Smith, and it works.
A little more. So Lord of the Rings, I kept these together.
Yeah. So I got the Balrog and the Fell Beast with the Witch King of Angmar's helmet in there. Those were fun. This is like, again, it's like me trying to make things that are black. Like how do I not put a million colors in everything? How do I make things black but still readable? So I was happy.
I imagine that's difficult. Do you? So I know some tattooers, they'll take black and they'll just drip some water in to like weaken it, and then some will use like grays. Do you typically weaken black when you're doing those like shades and stuff?
Yeah. So, well, for this, I'm using like I start with all the black. I do the lines first, obviously, and then I do all the black, and then I use an ink wash, like gray shading, which is watered down black. Yeah. And I'm blending into that, and then I put color on top. Learning about the way that I put the ink in my paintings changed the way that I tattoo. Also, it really did. And actually, the way that I tattoo affects the way I paint a lot, because in tattooing you have to do the black first. You can't, because the black will stain the other ink if you wipe it on top. So black comes first, and it's the most important part of the tattoo, right? Like it's the only part that's guaranteed to stay for the life of the tattoo. So if all your color fades away, I was taught the tattoo should look finished when you are done putting just in the black. That it should be okay. If there was no color left in the tattoo, you should be able to look at it and say, this is still a good tattoo. So
makes a lot of sense.
It's the bones.
Very cool. Yeah, I love these pieces and the
Yeah.
way you frame them with the body and the flow. Like that's a whole other part too that you have to consider instead of just painting on a piece of paper. You got to think about how it curves around the arm or the back.
Yeah, it
Was
changes
that
the way you
difficult at
touch it.
first?
Oh my god, yeah, it's so fucking hard, Lee. Tattooing is so fucking hard. It's like doing a tattoo isn't so bad, but tattooing, like making it fit and making it wrap right, and you got to get the money shot so that when the person is just standing, the tattoo looks good, even though it's going around a tube. You got to consider how it's going to warp the tattoo. So like there's a million things to think about. Not least of all that the person is going to age and the tattoo is going to age. So you can't just do whatever the fuck you want. You got to make it. You got to make it so that it's going to live looking good for a long time. That's the goal. It won't turn into a blob.
Yeah. Well,
But
and
also where
it's
you're
interesting too, 'cause, like with illustration, you might be working with one client and the project takes number of weeks and then it's done and then maybe it's even a repeat client. And yes, you have that in tattooing, but like tattooing it's like every day it's a whole new relationship, right? I mean, do you
oh my
feel like
god,
that?
yeah, yeah, and I love my clients, but that's like all of these people that you build relationships with. Literally that. They're like your friends. And especially along big pieces, long-term clients. Um, yeah, it's a relationship. And so you got to get gear up for work. You can't like half-ass it because you're about to like change them literally forever. So you got to show up, you got to be cool, you got to be kind, you have to be patient um and thoughtful and listen to them and their needs. And then you also have to like crush it at making art for them in front of them. So
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing I've ever done. If you ever end up doing it, it makes your art so much better, so much faster. It challenges you in a way that nothing else has ever challenged me, honestly. And I really don't mean to sound like hyperbolic, but tattooing so far in my life, I don't have a child, so we'll see what happens. But tattooing is the hardest thing I've ever done in terms of my art.
And I mean, I imagine like the lowest of lows too, like I imagine there's been days where it's just been like fuck. Like is it kind of like that sometimes? Yeah.
Early on, especially, it was a lot of that. I would go home from work every day when I started tattooing and I would just cry. I tell my clients this too, but it's like you're literally hurting somebody all day long. And then you're trying to do the best art you can. But you know how we were talking about how it feels when you start a new medium,
Yeah.
like ink or whatever, paint, whatever the fuck. With tattooing, you're learning a new medium on somebody and you're punishing them. Like you're hurting them. And you hope they like it, but like to an extreme degree. It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, hey man, I hope you like your new fucking album artwork. It's like, hey man, I hope you like your new fucking arm. Like, I really hope you like it because I'm
Yeah.
deeply imperfect. So I know that I could have done things better. That's the thing that sucks. Like with your art,
Yeah.
you can be like, it's not perfect. Next one, I'll do better. With a tattoo, you're like, it's not perfect. And it's on you forever. If you're like a critical of yourself artist, which like I'm sure all of us are,
Yeah.
it's a huge burden, you know.
And I mean, I'm not really showing it now, but I'm not heavily tattooed, but I have spent a lot of time. And I know that at the end of the night when they're like starting to get worn down, but they have to kind of keep their face on because it's like, because I'm
Yes.
an artist too, because I could read like, are you happy with it? And like
Yep.
there was one time where there's problem solving just like art, right? Artist made a mistake and she was like beating herself up with it. I'm like, look, we can get through this. Like I literally was like getting tattooed, like being like, it's fine. We'll figure it out. Because geometric piece and she just made like a mistake with a line. And I was like, man, we can get through this. And then it's just like, man, I could tell the emotional burden it has and then ended up being just fine. But
You're a good client, Lee, I can tell. like for you to be able to like read the room with that,
Yeah.
that's huge because I purposely try to avoid jobs where I think I could let the person down. If I can tell that there's something about the piece in advance that I guess this is me trying to control things, or maybe me being bratty, I'm not sure. But like, if I think I might not ace something, or I don't see it as a challenge that I could take on, and like, there's a chance that I could ace it, I like won't do it because I'm too afraid of that. Like,
Yeah.
I'll talk people out of something. They'll be like, I want this straight line or whatever here. And I'm like, we got to wrap a vine around it. Let me wrap a vine around it, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
But you're good. I can tell. That's empathic. As tattooers, we do need a little bit of that from the client to help us keep going.
Well, I just, I'm with you. But that's just really cool. I've really enjoyed this conversation about tattooing as well, because it is something that I'm very passionate about, but don't have the experience in. So let's talk a little bit about these then. So you got the sleeve here. Man, I love your dragons. So cool.
Thanks. I love doing dragons. And that top one on the right, that was really fun. I wanted it to look like a classic, just a classic straight up like Red Sonja, Dragonlance, like old school
Profile
RPG
shot.
style. Yeah. And it's of his wife. And I'm not sure what exactly the dragon represents. Could be him. But it's it's personal to him, and he let me do my thing with it. Awesome client who sat like a fucking beast for like 7 hours while I knocked that out. That was really fun. And then the bottom one, classic red dragon. Again, like the red dragon to me, that's classic old school 70s fantasy, 80s fantasy that I love. That Larry Elmore, Clyde Caldwell, Jeff Easley, that style fantasy. Totally. So if I can do a red dragon, I'm happy as a clam. Bottom right is my take on magic art that exists. So that one is not, that's my version, but that's based very closely on the artwork from Murderous Redcap. Okay. So it's based on a magic art. I love tattooing magic stuff. But fuck, I don't remember the name of the artist. I tagged him in the post, but that's just my version of his Redcap. And then on the right, my client Steven, who I worked with for a long time. I love him. He's also a fucking champ. That's a whole dark sleeve, and he's a big guy. So that took us a real long time. He's a beast. But I got to do a lot of characters that I love from the Dark Souls games. And I felt like it had that energy that I wanted, that wasn't just like Brian Froud fairy stuff, which I fucking love, but it also had that like it had darker, more brutal flavor to it. So I was really proud of that.
Yeah. The kind of chrome effect you have on that helmet there is really nice.
Thanks. That was I learned a lot working on Steven's arm, and how to do metal was a big part of it. Yeah. So yeah. Cool.
I think this is the last one. And that hyena, the fantasy term I might not know, but the hyena influence guy in the middle there definitely looks like the one from the beginning in the painting, it's cool.
Yeah. That's a gnoll. That's a D&D creature called a gnoll. Yep. Which was like one of my favorite creatures as a kid. And that's why I painted a gnoll for that other piece. I just fucking love them. But and also hyenas are matriarchal, which is like really rare. And I read a book about them when I was in my early 20s by Jane Goodall, and it was like a crazy. I just love hyenas. Like they're really cool and weird. So that's what that is. It's based on a sketch I did for that class actually, and the client saw the sketch and was like, just tattoo that on me. So I just made that into a color tattoo. Super cool client. On the left, that's Ronnie from Elden Ring. Also awesome client. He sat super tough for that. He drove out from like Ohio, I think. And it looks even better healed because it's not red and irritated. But that was really fun to do because I was excited about the colors and I love Ronnie.
Very cool.
Yeah, then we got our classic mimic. Love doing a mimic from Dark Souls or D&D. The mimics in Dark Souls are like famously fucking scary, so I love tattooing my Dark Souls freaks.
So is that more of the Dark Souls version with the legs and stuff?
Yeah.
Like okay.
Yeah. It'll like you go to take the treasure out of it and it just fucking stands up and like attacks you, and it's like a jump scare in the game. So it's so scary. People have like come up with ways to like rotate your camera to see if it's breathing, or like there's a chain on it. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, it's a whole thing. And then just another little. That's not really a Skaven. That's just one of my wraths, but it's obviously very inspired by the Warhammer Skavens. So that was super fun. He just let me do what I wanted with that. I just felt like that also kind of embodied the vibe I was going for lately.
Sick. Yeah, I think that's it for this. But man, really appreciate your time. This is a blast. We hit it off.
Oh, I'm glad it was fun. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I had so much fun.
I know. Gotta have you back on sometime.
Anytime. Yeah, I had such a good time. I could just fucking talk to you about this shit forever. So thanks for.
I'm learning a lot too. It's cool.
Oh yeah, me too. That's the point, right?
Just wrapping up here. What's like one piece of advice that you would give to artists who are just maybe trying to take their craft to the next level? They could be at any stage, but just they want to aim higher. What would be maybe something that you'd provide them with?
I would say you have to. Well, this is just my 2 cents. This is my 2 cents. I think you have to be obsessed. You have to do it all the time. You have to think about it all the time. And you have to have sketchbooks, and you have to draw some from life, because that's really going to help you. But also you just have to be drawing all the fucking time. I think if you're just starting out and you really do want it in your heart, you're like, I fucking love drawing, I love art, I want it. Don't get caught up with stuff looking like shit. You're going to draw and paint so much shit. It has to come out of you. It's like, I was thinking about this morning in the shower. This is something that Fenriz said in an interview. It's kind of gross because I don't know why he described it this way, but he was like, music. He was like, Darkthrone, like the music comes out of me it's like I think he described it literally like a tube of music, like sausage or some shit. That's disgusting, Fenriz. But like, also,
like Donnie Darko with the fucking weird spirit thing on his chest.
That's actually what I visualized too, Lee. Yes,
yeah,
that's exactly what I visualized. Imagine that it's coming out of you, and you just choose when. He was like, I just choose when to cut it, and that's an album. That's going to happen to you throughout your life as a creative person. It should just be coming out of you, right? And you just have to let it. I don't think you can stop yourself. I cringe at my shit all the time. All the time. I'm like, oh, this is so embarrassing. I'm humiliated. I'm not expressing myself correctly to people. It's not coming across right. Just keep going. Don't stop. You just got to grind, because there's no other way. You will never get there, but you're going to get better and better just by being relentless in your pursuit. You know what I mean? And collect as many fucking books. Don't just use the Instagram accounts. They're awesome. I love these accounts where they collect everything. They're super cool. But don't just do that. Buy all the books and then pore over them at home alone. Look at them and copy them and be obsessed with them. Research that artist. Just be obsessed. I think that's the advice that I would give, because the more you pour yourself into it, the more rewarding it is. Yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. No, that's great. I love it. Well, for everybody watching, please support Ellie. Follow her on Instagram. If she releases any prints, do that. If you're in really anywhere in the country, I mean, you want to travel, go to Virginia, book some tattoo time with her. And then any of the books that she has art in, support those too. But Ellie, dude, this has been so much fun. Thank you again. Really appreciate it.
It's so much fun. I really appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, for everybody, new episodes every Thursday. Thank you again. See you next time.